Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 2421, Desperation. Staring at Nicholas, who was standing from a distance, Rocher murmured, with Nicholas's cunning personality, he must have figured out a way to prevent us from escaping now that he performed this thurgy. We can't just stay still and wait for death to come, said Sword Chen. Looking up in the sky, Zen noticed some changes on the 8-diagram disc. He observed it for a while before saying, the 8-diagram disc is becoming smaller. Upon hearing this, everyone looked up at the same direction. Like a millstone, the huge 8-diagram disc still kept spinning, pulling everyone to have them rotate around Nicholas. If it continued, they would eventually be pulled into the center of the vortex. Suddenly, a blazing light appeared from the other side of the huge vortex, spreading out an extremely strong wave of space. Even at a long distance, everyone felt the strong fluctuation of space. After the light gradually dimmed, Samuel appeared from out of the blue. His hand was trembling, as he held onto the spear of supreme harmony. His face was ghastly pale. Even though he had hit the barrier of the vortex with all his might, Samuel still couldn't break it. The woman initially planned to have Samuel's clone to try it out. But having seen this, she couldn't help shaking her head. It would be useless and a waste of energy. Ha ha, Samuel, do you think you can escape? Dream on, Nicholas sneered, laughing hysterically. Raising his hands in the air, he controlled the 8-diagram disc, speeding up its spin as the vortex border shrank rapidly. All members of the alliance of powerful clans, as well as Samuel, Zen and the rest tried hard to press themselves against the barrier. But no matter how hard they tried to escape, they were like small boats drawn to the center of the huge whirlpool. The huge vortex, which was originally hundreds of miles wide, shrunk by half in just a few seconds. What should we do now? Are we really going to die here today? Holy Nicholas, aren't we all members of the alliance? For the sake of our cooperation, please spare our lives. Nicholas, we followed you obediently, but you want to sacrifice us. You don't deserve to be the head of the alliance. Most people who were members of the alliance were overwhelmed by despair. They had followed Nicholas to the Abyss Demon region hoping it would be beneficial to them, only to find out that he was leading them to their deaths. How could they accept such a cruel fate? Despite the cries of the people, Nicholas's face remained expressionless as he turned a deaf ear to them. He had always been incredibly famed and feared for his power. Now that he had sacrificed even himself, showing sympathy for these insignificant figures was the least of his concerns. As Nicholas controlled the 8-diagram disc even harder, the huge vortex shrank faster. Soon, its width shrank to 100 miles, 80 miles, 50 miles. Everyone became terrified as they ended up confined on a narrow space, spinning at a very high speed. Although they initially fought against each other, they decided to disregard their differences. Right now, all they were thinking about was escaping from the furnace of dark and light. But if Samuel and the others had no way to escape, how would an ordinary holy being or demi-holy being be able to? Still focused on the 8-diagram disc above them, Zen finally saw a glimmer of hope. Making sure that everyone would hear, he announced loudly, we can't just sit still and wait for our death. If I'm not wrong, the 8-diagram disc above us is actually a huge magic array. We'll need to attack it with all our might. If we can destroy this array, I believe that the furnace of dark and light will fall apart immediately. Hearing Zen's conclusion, everyone's eyes lit up with hope. No one was sure if they would be able to destroy the 8-diagram disc, but it was worth a try. He's right. If we all work together, we'll find a way out of this mess. Samuel raised an eyebrow, a smile escaping from his lips. Zen paid him an indifferent glance but said nothing in reply. Turning his hand over, a new long sword appeared on it. Buzz. As the way's blending energy burst out from his body, numerous red lotuses started to grow around him. The woman, Samuel's clone, Rocher and Sword Chen began to prepare their strongest attacks. Samuel also followed their suit. The members of the alliance of the powerful clans didn't give Zen a clear response. After all, they still had some scruples about Nicholas. However, they also made sure that they were ready to launch an attack. Even Rochelle's eyes were flashing with visible killing intent. The short swords in each of her hands shone brightly with red light. Never did she expect that she would end up fighting on the same side as Zen. But seeing that Nicholas didn't care about their safety, she didn't feel guilty about betraying him. Attack! Zen shouted, raising his long sword. God's intimidating strike. A broadsword radiance shot out from it, heading straight for the 8-diagram disc. The rest also followed, seeing him starting an attack. In order to escape and survive, they all went all out at the moment. Sword radiance, blade radiance, palm strikes, flames, and lightning. All these attacks shot straight up into the sky, making gales. Splash, boom, whoosh. There were less than 30 survivors from the union of the powerful clans, 3 of which were holy beings and more than 10 were demi-holy beings. When they exerted their strengths to the utmost, their joint power was earth-shattering, that even the truth of dark and light chaos from the 8-diagram disc seemed to pale in comparison. Everyone looked up, focusing their eyes on the sky as their powers ran their course towards the 8-diagram disc. The first attack to reach it was the sword radiance from Zen's God's intimidating strike. However, like a little stone thrown into a great lake, the sword radiance only created a few ripples, before disappearing into the spinning 8-diagram disc. It didn't work. Zen felt his heart sink in despair. The others who were watching also revealed their disappointment. Shortly after, a small crack suddenly appeared on the surface of the 8-diagram disc and quickly spread to its center. During that time, the attacks launched by the other people also reached the 8-diagram disc, expanding the damage and increasing the cracks on the disc. Did we make it? One asked, seeing the cracks spreading. It worked. Another giggled. The furnace of dark and light is actually fragile. Their eyes lit up with hope and excitement. Someone consumed pills, burnt their blood essence, and others even activated secret techniques. They launched the second round of attacks simultaneously. With their joint attacks, the cracks on the 8-diagram disc became wider. Just as the cracks were about to spread to the edge of the 8-diagram disc, Nicholas suddenly sneered and said, "Ha ha. How naive are you all?" After that, the dark and light energies on the surface of the 8-diagram disc started to fuse together, mending the cracks quickly until they disappeared without a trace. Everyone below were stunned and stopped their attacks in despair. They thought they finally found a way out, but it was just a misconception. Everyone felt desperate. It's no use. The furnace of dark and light is a perfect combination of dark and light energies. It would be impossible for us to break it. With all their hope gone, a deeper sense of despair overwhelmed them. Just then, the scope of the huge vortex shrank again, making it less than 10 miles wide now. Chapter 2422, Rochelle's Death. The aura emitted by the furnace of dark and light was originally scattered across a wide area. But right now, the aura was getting more and more concentrated. The truth of dark and light chaos, which was compressing, became denser, as if it was a real entity. The pressure exerted on everyone's head became greater. The holy beings and demi-holy beings could withstand it. However, some of the consummate true gods just couldn't bear it anymore. Rochelle's face had turned deathly pale. She took out a small jade pendant from her space ring and gently covered it with her hands. The pendant emitted a warm soul force. The jade pendant was a gift from her father and it was used to save her life. The soul of light, which didn't belong to anybody, was inside the jade pendant. After she placed the jade pendant on her forehead, the pressure of the truth of dark and light chaos decreased. She began to feel better. But the jade pendant's soul power was limited. In about 9 seconds, the surface of the jade pendant began to dim. Although Rochelle could still rely on the soul weapon to protect herself from the pressure, the other consummate true gods weren't so lucky. A consummate true god from the Zhao clan had his eyes wide open and he was gritting his teeth. He did not have a soul weapon, so he had to survive without any help. When he reached his limit, he suddenly let out a cry. His eyes rolled backwards into his head and his soul was completely shattered. He was unable to resist the gravity from the center of the whirlpool and floated towards Nicholas's body. He went inside Nicholas's body and merged with him. A consummate true god from the Fang clan, too, couldn't stand the pressure anymore. He roared madly and rushed towards Nicholas's body as well. He chose to commit a suicide explosion the moment he fused with Nicholas's body. The inner world of the consummate true god was perfect, so the power that emanated from the spontaneous explosion wasn't to be underestimated. Bang! Nicholas was covered in a dazzling light with a deafening thud. However, what happened next was very bizarre. The blast wave that erupted accumulated inside Nicholas's body. Did it get absorbed by Nicholas? He is capable of absorbing the blast wave produced by a self-explosion too. What is this amazing method that he's using? The crowd became even more desperate when they saw this scene. Zen also frowned slightly. When the shadow-bearing sword broke just now, he surrendered it, and the sword disappeared. It should have been absorbed by Nicholas. His furnace of dark and light was able to refine everything. Then what would the furnace produce in the end? Judging the situation, Nicholas's choice would definitely cause him to perish in the end. Even if he refined and produced something, he probably wouldn't be able to get it himself. I'll fight you for it. Another consummate true god couldn't stand it anymore. He took out a blood-red saber, turned into a red light, and raced towards Nicholas. But he, along with the saber, directly got absorbed into Nicholas's body and disappeared. It was like his body was a black hole, swallowing everything that approached him. As the enormous whirlpool continued to shrink, the aura of the 8 diagrams became more and more overpowering. Crack! Eventually a fissure appeared on Rochelle's jade pendant. It was evident that the soul weapon had reached its limit. Realizing that she was bound to die today, she felt a trace of despair and sadness. In the last moments, her eyes finally fell upon Zen. She wanted to kill Zen at first sight. Just before she was about to die, she suddenly felt a sense of relief, and realized that her hostility towards Zen was quite ridiculous. For so many years, all the members of the Mu clan bowed to the Dongfang clan. Her father had obeyed Nicholas all the time. Although the Mu clan had gained a lot, it was still just a vassal of the Dongfang clan. Rochelle was devoted to serving her clan wholeheartedly, and so she was firmly on the side of the alliance of powerful clans. She didn't expect to end up in such a situation where she would get killed by Nicholas. She was just a tool from the Mu clan. It was all so silly. Her hatred towards Zen was even more hilarious. If she put aside the hatred, she knew that Zen was a good person. His sister had a good eye for men. Now Rochelle was thinking that she probably shouldn't have grounded Nellie on the floating island. Her heart was filled with regrets as she flew towards Zen. Zen's expression was wary when he saw Rochelle dashing towards him. Among all the consummate true gods of the alliance of powerful clans, Rochelle was the one who wanted to kill him the most and the craziest one. Who knew what she would do at this moment? "What are you doing?" Zen asked cautiously. "Swoosh, swoosh. Can I ask you for one thing?" she managed to say in between catching her breath. "What is it?" Zen asked flatly. "If you can leave here alive, can you take my sister away from the floating island please?" Rochelle begged. Zen was surprised. He never expected Rochelle to say something like that in her last moments. "Please, I have always been independent and never asked anyone for help in my life," Rochelle said desperately. There was a look of despair on her delicate face. Zen had never seen her this way. Her pleas melted his heart. He didn't know what had come over her. "It looks like I can't leave either," Zen said with a wry smile. "Promise me, please," Rochelle implored anxiously. She could already hear the sound of her soul cracking under the unbearable pressure. She wouldn't be able to hold on for too long. Zen nodded slightly sympathetically. The corners of Rochelle's lips raised slightly, and a small smile replaced the anxiousness on her beautiful face. In terms of appearance, Rochelle was more beautiful than Nellie and she was energetic all the time. However, she was too domineering, and most men did not dare to look at her directly. Most of them treated her as a man. After the faint smile, her eyes suddenly lost their glow. Her entire body was like a leaf floating in the air, sucked away by the gravity of the huge whirlpool. She got pulled into Nicholas and entered his body. Rochelle was the last consummate true god to die. The mammoth whirlpool shrank to a width of 5 miles. Now it was the turn of the demi-holy beings who were still holding on for dear life. "Who can save me? Curse you, Nicholas, go to perdition. I don't want to be killed by him." Some demi-holy beings were wailing, some were silent, and some were thinking about a solution at this critical moment. They were very powerful figures in the divine land. How could they accept this kind of a death? Zen also shook his head. Of course, he was not willing to accept the result. However, the 8 diagrams was like the true demon body. The dark energy and light energy were complementary to each other. How could any regular method break through it? The true demon body. Suddenly Zen thought of something and said, "Come out." Buzz. The girl with the red eyes inside Zen's body came out and stared at him with her big eyes. Chapter 2423, Entering the 8 Diagrams. Rocher was a little puzzled when he saw Zen summon the girl with red eyes. Zen asked the red-eyed girl, "Can you establish a connection with the blue-eyed girl?" "With whom? What connection?" asked the red-eyed girl innocently with a smile. She had the intellect of a 4 or 5-year-old. Zen knew how the girl's brain worked, but he didn't know how to explain things to her. So all he did was command Rocher, summon the blue-eyed girl. Rocher nodded. A blue light appeared and with that the girl left his body. A connection between you and her, Zen said, pointing at the new entrant to help the red-eyed girl understand what he was saying. The girl with red eyes blinked and looked her blue-eyed counterpart. The two girls looked identical, except their temperament and the color of their pupils. Connection. The red-eyed girl frowned trying to think hard, and then she said, "Do you mean this?" As she spoke, a blue light flashed between her eyebrows. Space was being emitted faintly through the light. Then the light turned into a thin thread, spreading to the blue-eyed girl. It was a blue thread. It was a special spatial passageway, which could only be used to transmit energy between the two girls. It was their instinct and innate ability. As soon as the blue-eyed girl saw the thin thread, her previously indifferent demeanor changed. She showed a trace of interest, and the middle of her eyebrows also emitted a ray of light. The two thin threads intertwined in the void. When the thin threads met, Rocher and Zen also had a strange feeling, as if a layer of perception occurred in their minds, which allowed them to become aware of each other's existence. "It's done," Zen smiled. By now, the woman and Sword Chen knew Zen's purpose. Once the two girls got connected, they were seemingly invincible. Earlier, she had created clones of the holy beings, but even when united, the clones could not hurt the girls. Zen looked at the 8 diagrams above and said, "Rocher, let's go up together." Warriors as powerful as Emily might be able to break the 8 diagrams in the air using brute force. Some other Shore Realm warriors, who were less powerful but proficient in breaking arrays, could probably break it too. After all, the furnace that Nicholas displayed might not be perfect. But right now, none of the warriors present knew how to break the array. Zen also was unsure about it, so he followed his instinct and made a decision. "Okay," Rocher replied confidently without any hesitation. He trusted Zen's judgment completely. At this moment, there was no other choice but to take a risk. Something peculiar started to happen to Nicholas's body as he stood still in the center of the huge whirlpool. His arms, nails and hair turned into red crystals, and his entire body was covered with cracks. The fragments of the cracked skin were also turning into crystals. Phew, one demi-holy being couldn't stand it anymore and flew into Nicholas. He, too, was crushed into pieces before getting absorbed into Nicholas's body. Nicholas was refining everything that was close to him and, at the same time, he was glaring at Zen and Rocher who were standing far away. When he saw that the two girls were once again connected, his face suddenly darkened. He knew how powerful the two girls could be when they combined forces. It was extremely difficult to break the furnace of dark and light, but it was not impossible. With this thought in his mind, Nicholas started waving his shapeless hands. Countless red crystals fluttered along with his movements, and the 8 diagrams above started to spin. The 8 diagrams shrank once more. But the momentum and pressure inside the 8 diagrams had the opposite effect, they were again increasing greatly. "Arg, I can't take it anymore. Please just let me die." Some of the demi-holy beings had lost their minds and were screaming in agony and flying around in the whirlpool. It was a small area of less than 2 miles. There was no space for them to flee. One of the demi-holy beings dashed towards the woman. Sword Chen was the first to react. The brown sword rays formed a large net and enveloped the demi-holy being inside and cut him up into pieces. The rest of the demi-holy beings were all sucked into Nicholas's body. Their bodies, weapons, and their fancy clothes were all shredded apart and turned into crystals. After the 10-odd demi-holy beings had been obliterated, only a few holy beings remained along with Samuel and Sword Chen and his group. Even these handful survivors were struggling to make it. It seemed that Samuel had activated some kind of a secret skill. His eyes were bleeding and his hair had gone from black to white. Sword Chen was in a complete state of emotion closing. While there was no emotion in his eyes, his body was trembling violently. Zen and Rocher stood beneath the 8 diagrams and looked at the rapidly rotating 8 diagrams, trying to gain confidence for what they were about to do. No matter how many people attacked it, the 8 diagrams couldn't be broken easily. "Let's go in," Zen ordered. Now there was no time to hesitate or ponder over his fatal command. If they didn't break the array, they would all die, and if they could destroy it, they would live. Rocher nodded and the two of them entered the array boldly but cautiously. The 8 diagrams array was full of dark and light energies inside. The moment he entered, Zen felt a magnetic force, which could tear him to pieces. Luckily, since his body had just been refined by the red lotuses, it was infused with the truth of godly way. After taking a portion of the power into his own body, he was able to barely hold on. He was more worried about Rocher. After all, his body wasn't as strong as his. He couldn't see how Rocher was dealing with the dark and light energies. Zen was worrying about him when suddenly he felt a powerful surge of energy in his body. It gave him a start. Almost instinctively, Zen decided to release this energy. Hundreds of red lotuses surrounded his body, crazily extending outwards. Rocher was in the same situation as Zen. The overwhelming killing power in his body was transmitted to Zen, and as Zen transferred the surging power in his body to Rocher, thousands of ice flowers exploded everywhere. Is it done? The woman raised her head and looked up. She could see that in the spinning 8 diagrams array of red light and array of blue light were rapidly rotating. These two lights must be Zen and Rocher. Nicholas was also observing the two lights in the 8 diagrams. He could clearly sense the existence of both Zen and Rocher. Just like two stubborn stones in a torrent, Zen and Rocher helped each other to stop the circulation of dark and light energies, hoping to break the form of the furnace of dark and light using pure brute force. Chapter 2424, Break the Balance. How can you break my furnace without finding the array I? This cannot happen. No. At that moment, almost half of Nicholas's physical body had already been crystallized. His legs and the lower half of his torso had already been transformed into countless small yet incredibly spiky red crystals, rendering them useless. The only things that made him look human were his upper torso and head, but the crystals were fast approaching them too. Now that he had reached the last stage of refining, he definitely wouldn't allow Zen and Rocher to break the furnace. Keep shrinking. I don't think you can hold on. Nicholas's rage-filled eyes widened as he activated the internal momentum of the truth of dark and light chaos to its limit. It seemed that he had put a fire in the furnace. At that moment, the 8 diagrams above him as well as the huge whirlpool below him once again shrank greatly. The whole whirlpool was now only about 300 feet wide. The 8 diagrams, on the other hand, was now looking incredibly different from how it looked when the battle started, and it started to move downward. But as the whole furnace of dark and light shrank, the power inside the 8 diagrams was becoming greater than ever. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The killing power produced by the dark and light energies was transmitted to Zen and Rocher respectively. The two warriors absorbed the strong power and transferred it to each other. A few moments later, they started condensing the red lotus flowers and ice flowers once again. Unfortunately, the red lotus flowers and ice flowers they released were even assimilated to the dark and light energies, effectively being part of them. One could say that the two auras of the 8 diagrams were actively resisting the forces exerted by Zen and Rocher. It can't go on like this. We need a better plan. Zen thought to himself, his mind racing to find a solution. Since the two girls were connected to each other, Rocher understood what Zen was thinking. But the 8 diagrams doesn't have an array I, Zen. How will we be able to break it? Rocher asked, also feeling a little anxious. Zen did not answer back, but he continuously released the red lotus flowers, lost in thought as to what to do next. Bromley had also cultivated the dark and light energies. Zen had come into contact with such energies on the true path. During that time, all of the enemies he encountered were all formed by the dark and light energies. Because Bromley still hadn't finished cultivating the complete truth of dark and light chaos at that time, Hallett and Augustus were only able to master a part of it. What shocked Zen the most was the 8 diagrams chart of Fuxi. The 8 diagrams chart had the ability to make any technique evolve quickly and perfectly. It also helped Zen reach the consummation of the emotion-closing godly way in a short period of time. Unfortunately, there was a huge gap between this 8 diagrams and the 8 diagrams chart of Fuxi. But what Zen didn't know was that the 8 diagrams and the truth of dark and light chaos were both created by Fuxi. For the longest time, the 8 diagrams chart had been considered as the most precious treasure that came from the ancient divine era. Although Nicholas was considered an incredible talent by many of his peers, he still had not been able to successfully reach the other shore realm. So while the furnace that he had sacrificed himself to create was powerful, it still had numerous fatal flaws. Powerful warriors such as Emily and Timotheus could identify these flaws at a single glance. 8 diagrams chart, 8 diagrams chart, 8 diagrams chart. Zen chanted in his head as he tried to recall something. The infinity gave birth to the supreme ultimate, which then turned into 2 modes. And those 2 modes represented the dark and light energies. The dark and light energies had the ability to turn into 4 different images, but it was difficult to make one thing contain the other. Currently, the 2 holes of the 8 diagrams had the dark and light energies mixed with each other. It should be difficult for Nicholas to cultivate the truth of dark and light chaos to the perfect level right now. There might be an opportunity there, Zen thought. The 2 holes. He suddenly shrieked out. Excitedly, he turned to Rocher and said, release the transformed energies into those two holes. What? Why? What are you planning to do? Roche asked curiously. Just do what I say. Zen replied, his tone urgent. Roche was taken aback by what was happening. What is this guy thinking? He thought to himself. But now that they were pressed for time, Roche had no choice but to follow Zen without questioning him. As long as this works, I guess I really don't have to worry about anything at all. Soon enough, his body started floating towards the dark energy. The people below saw that the 8 diagrams started to rotate slowly and that the black and white colors were beginning to become integrated. Both Zen and Roche were also starting to rotate along with the 8 diagrams. Zen was on the white light energy's side, while Roche was on the dark energy's side. After exerting incredible efforts, the two warriors soon found the two holes. Here it is, Zen proclaimed as he went into the black hole. With a wave of his hand, numerous red lotus flowers spread into the hole. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The moment the red lotus flowers flooded into the black hole, they started to be absorbed by it. At the same time, Roche was working on the other hole. He carefully released the ice flowers into the white hole, and just like the red lotuses inside the black hole, they were quickly absorbed. This seems to be useless, Zen. Roche shouted, visibly nervous. Zen stared at the black hole in front of him and murmured, the 8 diagrams relies on these two holes in order to absorb energies and turn them into the dark and light energies. These two holes are the reasons why the balance of the 8 diagrams is maintained. Something flashed in Zen's mind. With eyes wide, he floated towards the other side of the 8 diagrams. The 8 diagrams was only a few hundred feet in size. Zen adjusted his position and came to Roche's side. What are you doing here? Roche asked, completely confused by what was happening. Let's put the energies inside this together, Zen replied, visibly excited. That way maybe we can break the balance. Do you know that for sure or are you guessing again? Roche asked again, skeptical about Zen's plan. I'm just guessing, Zen replied, nodding. And truly, this time around, Zen was right. The dark and light energies were being converted in these two holes ceaselessly. Previously, everyone joined hands to attack and crack the 8 diagrams a bit. However, as the 8 diagrams spun crazily, the power of their attacks was distributed between these two holes and then turned into the dark and light energies, becoming a part of the 8 diagrams. Because of that, the crack or any damage that the 8 diagrams sustained was quickly fixed. If they wanted to break the balance, they should only attack one point of the 8 diagrams. Buzz. Slowly, the red lotus flowers released by Zen and the ice flowers released by Roche rushed into the white hole. They were then transformed into dark energies. Because of that, an imbalance was starting to occur. The dark energies were more than the light energies. Finally, Zen shouted, noticing that his plan was working. From below, it seemed that the area of the white side on the 8 diagrams was constantly decreasing, and the area of the black side was constantly increasing. You too. Nicholas looked confused and shocked. He had no idea how Zen figured out the method to break the balance in such a short time. His method is undoubtedly effective. He thought in disbelief. After breaking the balance of the furnace of dark and light, it became extremely difficult to control. The entire 8 diagrams even started to deflect. The dark energies can turn into light energies. Let me see how you can still break the balance, shouted Nicholas. Now that he was at the last step of refining, how could he let them cause his failure? The superfluous dark energies started to flow towards the white hole. Because of what was happening, in the eyes of Sword Chen and the others, the 8 diagrams' shape was becoming more and more bizarre. What Nicholas did was not normal, but he had no choice, he had to do that. Unconventional as it might have been, in the end, the balance was maintained. But this time, Sword Chen had no strength to see what was happening above. The other holy beings also couldn't hold on any longer and they all fell into the center of the huge whirlpool. They were then absorbed by Nicholas and immediately turned into the red crystals. Now, only Sword Chen, Samuel, the woman, and Samuel's clone were left in the huge whirlpool. Apparently, Sword Chen had consumed almost all of his strength. Even if he tried his best to activate the emotion-closing godly way, he would not be able to resist the increasing power from the furnace of dark and light. Chapter 2425, Falling Star Palm. Sword Chen didn't stop and continued to exert his strength. He wasn't alone as the others also struggled to give their all. Samuel spared no effort but was also caught in a pickle at the moment. He kept on activating the Spear of Supreme Harmony to create a new space channel. This weapon had helped decrease the damage he had taken by using the new space channels for him to hide. As a result of creating multiple space channels, he disappeared and appeared from time to time like a shining star from the heavens. Just like a drowning man struggling to keep himself afloat in the water as he gasped for air, he used his remaining strength to struggle on the edge of the vortex. The woman had noticed the strategy Samuel tried to keep himself away from danger. She instantly gave an order to Samuel's clone and imitated what Samuel had done, following his actions to create space channels. She moved in a swift manner and then instantly concealed herself before grabbing Sword Chen inside for a chance to survive. Ha ha, no more struggles. Both of you, come to me. Nicholas fiercely bellowed. He only had one head left and the flesh below his neck had already been refined into red crystals. Exerting every bit of his remaining strength, he had managed to pull the 8-diagram disc. It wouldn't be long before the furnace of dark and light was completely absorbed into his body. Everything inside space, which included the 8-diagram disc made from the dark and light energies, Zen, Roche and even himself, would be refined. It didn't work, Roche said anxiously. Zen frowned as he looked at the situation and responded, no, it worked. However, Nicholas managed to maintain the balance of the 8-diagram disc again. Our attacks were not strong enough. We must do better than this. He believed that once their attacks had exceeded the range Nicholas could control, the furnace would break apart. Roche thought about the plan and agreed. A trace of determination appeared on his vigorous face, but he was still feeling a bit hesitant deep inside. He was created for these moments. He had evaluated carefully about their situation and hoped that someone else would save the day. Maybe he didn't have to use that power. This thought kept haunting him, preventing him from using his trump card. At the same time, Iris's face kept flashing in his mind. Iris, his wife, was still on the floating island waiting for him to go back to her. This thought finally helped him make up his mind. He immediately composed himself as the hesitation in his mind gradually faded away. A golden light then appeared on the surface of his body. An imposing aura started to emit from him. Roche, what are you doing? Zen asked, his face full of confusion. Nicholas suddenly felt the change and was also stunned. He sensed that the special aura was coming out of Roche. He felt it was familiar and realized that Roche had once used the skill in the Abyss Demon region. When he activated it earlier, even the little fiends couldn't lay a finger on him. Nicholas felt strange about this before, but he just shrugged it off. He didn't think too much about it and just thought of it as a special soul attack. But as Roche's aura became increasingly strong, he was proven wrong with his assumptions. He now felt threatened. He had indeed underestimated it. What's this? Nicholas asked, showing a shocked expression. Zen was worried. Nicholas throughout had been trying his best to maintain the balance under Zen's and Roche's attacks. However, if one of them used a more powerful skill as Roche just did, it was unlikely that Nicholas would stand a chance. Feel my power, Nicholas. This will be your end. Roche's face appeared calm and solemn as the golden light on his body shone brighter. Buzz. The golden light suddenly moved and started to gather towards the soaring snake sword. Zen observed what happened and couldn't help but stare at Roche with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. The golden light on Roche's body started to fade away. It started to fade on his feet, and right after the golden light disappeared, his feet turned into stones. Buzz. There was a ripple of energy as it didn't stop there. His legs, knees and all the lower parts of his body turned to grayish stones. On the other hand, the golden light on his sword continued to shine brighter. The power within was terrifying. Dang it, stop now, lol, I treated you nicely, how dare you intend to kill me? Nicholas shouted in despair. He used the dark energy to rush towards Roche, but Roche was now as solid as a massive rock, and he didn't even move an inch. Buzz. On Roche's body, the golden light had almost faded away and bits of it slightly reflected. 2/3 of his body had already turned into stones. It's about time, Roche spoke in a solemn voice and turned to face Zen, giving hint of a gentle smile. It was a bright one, but it contained a hint of regret that his fate had come to this. In fact, I don't want to die right now. Why should it be me instead of you? He secretly thought to himself, full of regret. His fate was decided the very moment he was born into the universe, and he had no right to choose his destiny. Both minds of Zen and Roche were connected through the two girls, so Zen naturally felt the other's distress. His eyebrows instantly twitched as he realized what Roche was trying to do. Although he didn't know what kind of method Roche was going to use, he sensed that it would be deadly once a strike from the sword was made. Seeing that Roche had lifted the soaring snake sword, Zen acted quickly. He suddenly reached out and pressed his arm down. There's no time left. Why are you stopping me? Roche asked fretfully as he was stopped abruptly. Seeing that Zen had stopped Roche, Nicholas's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. Well done. Stop him. Don't let him strike me. His sword attack will cost his own life. He will definitely die if he unleashes this strike. Hearing his words, Zen looked down at Nicholas. He sneered, there's no need to kill you at the expense of his life. Zen made a quick movement which gave a trace of astonishment on Rocher's face. He didn't know why Zen had such confidence. Not missing any second, Zen extended his arm. An incredibly strong power flowed in his hand and it quickly turned into a green light. As the light coagulated, it quickly formed into a square crystal. What's this? How's it possible that there's such magnificent power in the world? As Nicholas observed the crystal, he was visibly surprised. He had perfected the truth of dark and light chaos and even believed that he was the strongest throughout the entire divine land. He was the kind of person who never took anyone seriously other than the Yellow Emperor guards. In his eyes, Samuel was not even qualified to be regarded as a rival. Samuel was nothing without the spear of supreme harmony. But the two young warriors fighting him right now had shown great power beyond his imagination. The golden light that Rocher summoned was incredibly surprising enough. On top of that, the square crystal that Zen materialized emitted an indescribable aura of mystery. This is the power that you can never understand. It represents the truth of the entire chaos. Zen explained in a cold voice as the square crystal in his hand began to spin. Simultaneously, a green vortex appeared above his head. A special star could be seen in the center of the vortex. The star seemed irrelevant in size, but it couldn't be taken lightly by its appearance. In truth, nothing in the entire divine land could battle its great power. It turned out that the power of the furnace of dark and light fainted in comparison with the tiny star. The three people struggling at the edge of the huge vortex, the woman, Sword Chen and Samuel, were not subjected to its influence. They certainly felt its power as they showed different unbelievable expressions upon seeing the star. Samuel revealed his astonishment and fear at the same time. The woman showed curiosity and Sword Chen beamed with pleasure and relief. Everyone were all taken aback by the surprising turn of events. It was beyond their expectations. Nobody would have expected that Zen still hid such a powerful skill up his sleeve. Chapter 2426, Encounter. Whoosh. The star grew for a short while and then plummeted towards the white hole. After Zen returned to the divine land, there wasn't much time left for him to learn about the falling star palm. Although an immense amount of mysterious energy was contained in the truth crystal, it was not particularly powerful in terms of its strength. But when it came to the energy of truth, it was impossible to transform it using only the furnace of dark and light. Even the furnace of dark and light set up by Fuxi personally would also be the same case. Of course, if he took action, there might be other methods he could use to cope with the falling star palm. Bang! The star exploded as soon as it fell into the white hole. But the energy flow was swallowed up by the white hole, so it disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never appeared in the first place. In no time, beams of green energy suddenly gushed out from the black hole on the other side. The energy flow, like exploding fireworks, quickly filled up the entire 8 diagrams disk. It's impossible. I can refine anything with the help of my furnace of dark and light, absolutely everything in the world. Nicholas's eyes were about to crack. He tried his best to control the 8 diagrams disk and forcefully drew it down. At the same time, the whirlpool below started to shrink rapidly. Sword Chen had fainted and was being propped up by the woman. Samuel had almost reached his limit, as there was a look of despair on his face. Bang! The 8 diagrams disk could no longer maintain its shape. It started to collapse and explode at the last moment. Nicholas calmed himself down. He was in deep thought. The unwillingness on his face disappeared and was replaced by calmness and coldness. Shortly after, countless cracks appeared on his head, which then turned into red crystals. At the moment of the explosion of the 8 diagrams disk, the huge whirlpool that had shrunk to 60 to 70 feet also collapsed. As soon as the fetters disappeared, the woman took Sword Chen and quickly retreated. Samuel clenched his teeth, trying his best to hold on till the end. He used the Spear of Supreme Harmony to build a space channel and exited through it. As for Zen and Rocher, the violent shock wave created by the 8 diagrams disk propelled them dozens of miles away. Although the shock wave was very strong, Rocher's body was covered by the golden light, so he was unhurt. Zen himself was so strong. He escaped without a scratch on his body. He drew a parabola in the void. As soon as his body stabilized, he rushed forward. Mother! Nicholas brought Lorena there. By reading Nicholas's memories, Zen knew that he had hidden Lorena in a special small world. But after the furnace of dark and light was activated, it refined everything in the big whirlpool. Did Lorena and the small world get refined as well? Whoosh! Zen shot off towards the center of the whirlpool explosion. A frosted red statue came into view. It was actually a woman's statue. However, the statue didn't have a head. This statue. Zen's eyes narrowed slightly. He suddenly thought of something, and used the reincarnation soul weapon again. He and Rocher had to destroy the 8 diagrams disc at that moment, so he didn't spend time reading Nicholas's memories. Although Nicholas died, his memory flame was still alive. However, the memory flame was in a state of stagnation and didn't update any fresh memories anymore. So when Zen saw Nicholas's last memory, he was astonished. I have failed in the end. I knew you'd come to read my memory. Since I used the furnace of dark and light, I was prepared to sacrifice my own life. I knew that I would die, but as I am a holy being in the divine land, I would be reborn with the help of my universe. My soul would then occupy the treasure body again. That was my plan. I thought if I could refine the true demon body into the treasure body, it might work. That was why I was willing to sacrifice myself. But in the end, you shattered my hopes. I have to say that it's decreed by fate, and I can't do anything to change it. Lorena is sealed in the mysterious yellow world within the ring on the treasure body's finger. Although I have used the furnace of dark and light, I can still protect the small world. I promised to help her find her body, but I failed. Although the treasure body can't refine the true demon body, it is the last gift I want to give her. Zen's eyes searched the hand of the statue after he finished reading the last memory of Nicholas. As predicted by him, there was a dark golden ring on the statue's finger. Mother. Nicholas's last words had got Zen excited. He approached the statue with the intention of removing the ring. However, just then, a space fluctuation appeared from the side and a figure popped out from it. It was Samuel. Like Zen, Samuel could also read Nicholas's memory. When he realized that the treasure body was extraordinary, he had the idea of grabbing it. He knew he was no match for Zen, but he had the spear of supreme harmony with which he could come and go as he pleased and Zen could do nothing to stop him. Obviously Zen was stunned at this turn of events. A trace of anger was visible on his face. Get the heck out of here. Splash. With a wave of his hand, he fired a red lotus at Samuel. Just as the red lotus was about to reach Samuel, he snatched the treasure body and fled into the space channel. Bang! Another space channel came to him from afar, crisscrossing Samuel's space channel. The two space channels collided and forced him out of his space channel. Now there was no escape. Samuel staggered, his face darkened and he threw the treasure body into the air. This time, he used the spear of supreme harmony to tear up the void and drill his way out of the cold fiend's lair. The woman didn't mean to hunt him down. After all, his clone was in bad condition, and it was difficult for him to use the spear of supreme harmony. But she had succeeded as Samuel left the treasure body behind. Zen was in no mood to pursue Samuel anymore. He flew over to the treasure body to take off the dark golden ring from its finger. There was a simple seal on the ring. Zen activated his spiritual sense and broke the seal with a bit of force. When he removed the seal, an unexpected beam of bright red light shot out from it. Lorena emerged from the little world with her long hair trailing behind her. She had expected to see Nicholas upon coming out of her world, so she pulled a long face, but when she saw Zen, her expression froze and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Zen, why are you here? Did Nicholas catch you? Lorena sounded a bit worried. After all, the void didn't seem like a normal place. She glanced around and was surprised to see the woman not too far away from her. The woman covered her mouth with her hand and stared at Lorena with her beautiful eyes. She couldn't believe she would meet Lorena here of all places. Chapter 2427, Reunion. Lorena stared at that woman for a while and her eyes turned glassy. Rosie. She called her name. There was so much she wanted to say, but she couldn't utter a single word. As she gazed at the woman, Lorena felt as if she had been transported back to the early years of the war on the Divine Land. At that time, Rosie was still an innocent girl. She didn't even care about the reason why the Divine Land came into being and why the Nine-Li race had to leave the Source World. She was so curious about everything in this new world. Back then, the Time Sea was still a small lake. She liked the magnificent scenery of the lake. She asked people to build a pavilion by the lake. Lorena knew at that time that the Nine-Li race was in danger. She was filled with melancholy and only Rosie's innocent smile was able to ease her mind. Sister, how did you become like this? Rosie floated over, feeling heartbroken. She wanted to hold Lorena in her arms, but all that was left of Lorena was her head, so she didn't know how to hold her. Zen was baffled when he heard the woman's words. Could this woman be his mother's younger sister? So that made her his aunt. It was confusing at first for Zen, but the more he thought about it the more it made sense. He was not surprised anymore. After all, this woman had always maintained that she was a 9Li member, and 9Li people all had the same blood. Lorena studied Rosie for a while and said, You are not alive, are you? Although Rosie looked the same to common people, Lorena could still feel that she didn't have the aura of life. What she emitted was a strong faith energy. The people of the Divine Land generally called this the aura of ferocious beasts. Pressing her lips together, Rosie nodded at first. But then she shook her head firmly and said, I've never really died. One day, I'll fight all the way back to Divine Land and rebuild our 9Li race. Lorena felt a little confused when she sensed Rosie's deep resentment and looked at Zen, who was beside her. Mother, this is the Abyss Demon region, Zen reminded her. Zen's words dawned on Lorena. She continued, Rosie, is your deep resentment due to the disaster of our 9Li race? Is it because of that you became a ferocious beast in the Abyss Demon region? Lorena was still confused. The forbidden areas were formed by divine citizens' faith energy, positive, negative or reverent. Various kinds of faith energy might appear in the forbidden areas. And they were the source of the imagined, fierce beasts. But how was it possible for Rosie to turn into a ferocious beast in the Abyss Demon region just because of her resentment alone? It didn't seem like a plausible theory. No, Rosie shook her head, and calmly said, it was because the resentment of the entire 9Li race was too deep that it turned into the black water. Now this black water has gathered all sorts of resentment of the 9Li race. They all felt intense fear before their death. And these fears have gathered in the black water. Lorena raised her eyebrows slightly. All the members of our 9Li race are in the Abyss Demon region. Rosie shook her head again. They have all disappeared. In order to make my memory form a mark that never perishes, they sacrificed themselves. Back then, when Yellow Emperor guards chased all the way to the Divine Land, they used the blood-splitting technique, turning all the people of the 9Li race into a mass of blood. They had miserable deaths. Numerous 9Li members suffered from extreme pain and great fear before they died. As the fear of all the 9Li members gathered in the black water, it became the source of fear in the entire Divine Land. In the beginning, the black water area was not so deep and unfathomable. However, as time went by, the imagination of fear from thousands of creatures in the Divine Land accumulated in the black water area until it reached its current size. Fear was also a kind of faith energy, but it had its innate memory mark. For example, if someone was afraid of something, the fear only existed in that particular person. Therefore, in the beginning, the force of the primitive fear in the black water consisted of the individual fears of the 9Li race. Such fears had souls. The 9Li people who still had memories in the black water quickly understood their situation. In a short period of time, their souls would disappear, but the force of their fears within would remain in the black water. Over time, the black water would slowly evolve and a variety of strange creatures would appear, such as the devils. Some members of the 9Li race realized what would happen and quickly made a decision. They selected a person who would survive. In the end, Rosie was the chosen one. Those wisps of soul power carried the resentment of the entire 9Li race, and gathered within Rosie, making her the master of the black water. In the following divine eras, she had been secretly operating the black water. She did not allow the devils within the black water to have a consciousness, and they could only be at the mercy of her command. She had also tried to control the fiends, and even the entire Abyss Demon region. After several failed attempts, her gaze had fallen on the true demon body. After listening to Rosie's monologue, Lorena had a strange look on her face and sighed, You've suffered a lot. I didn't know that the 9Li race had such a struggle at the last moment. Rosie walked towards her and held up Lorena's head and pressed it against her forehead. She sobbed, You have also suffered a lot. I'm so sad to see you look like this. It had been so many years since the two sisters parted. Now that they could reunite, it was under such tragic circumstances. It was a heartbreaking sight. But where am I? I was bound by Nicholas. Where is he? Lorena looked around and her gaze stopped at the red transparent statue behind her. The void was deathly quiet at this point. This is the bottom of the Abyss Demon region, Zen explained. Nicholas might already be dead. Dead? Lorena's eyes flashed in astonishment upon hearing his words. Yes, he wanted to refine all of us at the last moment, but Rocher and I destroyed the array set up by him, said Zen. Thanks to her knowledge and experience, she knew that Nicholas was not invincible. But it was hard to digest the fact that this handful of people had defeated Nicholas. It felt like a crazy fantasy. However, when she looked at her son's serious face, she had no reason not to believe him. Then, what's this statue? Lorena asked. This statue seemed to be made for her. It only had a woman's body without the head. This statue. Zen was shocked. He didn't think that Nicholas would leave behind such a precious body for his mother. Nicholas had wanted to refine a body for himself by taking advantage of his universe and his immortality. But he failed and knew that he couldn't escape death. He had a change of heart at the last moment and left this precious body for his mother. "Mother, you can read his last memory by yourself," said Zen and gently flipped his hand. A small pyramid appeared in it. A tiny eye was carved into the pyramid. He turned the pyramid so that the eye was facing Lorena's head. Then he asked her to inject her spiritual sense into it. Lorena looked at the small pyramid. She was a bit puzzled, but she poured a wisp of spiritual sense into it anyway. A long time passed. Lorena extracted her spiritual sense and sighed. Nobody knew what was going on in her head. Chapter 2428, Shake. He finally fulfilled his promise. Lorena murmured with a wry smile. She had never expected to be in such a situation. Nicholas had refined almost everything, including himself. She blinked and floated over to the body. The moment Lorena's head touched the body, they were fused together. Buzz. A faint light enveloped her in the body. As the light gradually dissipated, the color of the body changed. The original red clothes were bright and new. The exposed arms and legs were white and delicate and as smooth as jade. This body didn't merge with the true demon body as Nicholas had wished, but he already had refined too many things. He had refined the holy beings, demi-holy beings, Zen's shadow-bearing sword, various kinds of treasures and eventually even himself. Lorena lifted her hands and studied them for a while. Then she held out her hands and a crimson light cone shot out from the tip of her slender fingers. The blood body. Lorena was astounded. This blood body was inherited from the source world and she had not expected that Nicholas would refine and create it. She reckoned that it might be the Yellow Emperor guards who had taught this method to Nicholas. But she was wrong. Nicholas had obtained the method to refine the blood body from the Sea of Truth and not from the Yellow Emperor guards. Swish. With a flick of her finger, Lorena sent the crimson light cone towards the void in a dazzling momentum. "Congratulations, Mother," Zen said with a smile. Although this blood body was not her mother's original body, it was a pretty good body. Judging from the light cone that his mother shot out, the blood body was extraordinary and very powerful. Lorena nodded. Her gaze once again fell on the pyramid in Zen's hand. "What is this? Why can it read people's memories?" Lorena had come across certain methods of reading people's memories. She knew that there were some experts in the source world who could secretly read memories. Now Nicholas didn't exist anymore, but the pyramid could allow her to read his memory. She thought it was miraculous. "This is the reincarnation soul weapon. It should be controlled by our 9Li race," Zen replied. "Those who have pure 9Li blood can awaken the memory flames of all the people of 9Li race." What? Lorena was surprised to learn this. Rosie, too, was shocked. They had been staying in the Divine Land, but Chiyu had built this ship and did not reveal this magic to his descendants. The Divine Land was the last hope of the 9Li race. Chiyu's ultimate goal was that the 9Li race would not get exterminated, and he also hoped that there would be a miracle in the Divine Land. Therefore, Chiyu arranged the Divine Land as a deserted land to let his descendants stay in a relatively cruel environment, cultivate and grow. If it weren't for the Yellow Emperor guards, the numerous people in the Divine Land would all be members of the 9Li race. There would also be disputes, power division and life and death struggles. However, during the competition, there were still some super talents appearing from generation to generation. It was a pity that the 9Li race had been destroyed by the Yellow Emperor guards. Chiyu had hidden many secrets in the Divine Land and left treasures for the 9Li race to discover. But many of them had not yet been discovered. For example, the reincarnation soul weapon was one of the treasures. If one controlled it, it would be equivalent to taking control of the reincarnation. This meant that one would control everyone's fate in the Divine Land. This treasure had the power to decide whether people died forever or could be reborn. It was a really incredible ability. But if I want to take full control of the reincarnation soul weapon, it needs the pure blood of the 9Li race, Zen explained. So, I have to hand this treasure over to you. Why? Lorena felt confused. She didn't think there would be anything wrong with Zen's blood. Zen shrugged and said casually, "My blood is not pure enough." "Why is that?" Lorena stared at Zen in surprise. Zen had told her some secrets to clear up some of her confusion. But she still had so many questions to ask him. Back then, she had thrown him out of the Divine Land in order to save his life. So how did Zen manage to return? And why did he get involved in the Abyss Demon region? It was not easy to pollute the pure blood of the 9Li race. So how did Zen's blood become impure? It's a long story. Zen narrated everything that had happened after he had been thrown out of the divine land, including the episode with Timotheus, Emily and the others in detail. Meanwhile, on the top of the divine land, an overwhelming amount of power was erupting from the space whirlpool. Just 1/10 of that power would be enough to instantly kill a holy being. Whoosh. After a while, Emily jumped out of the space whirlpool looking exhausted. She spoke through her life vitality, "It's your turn." Right on cue, another shore realm warrior of the snake goddess race jumped into the whirlpool. The space barrier outside the divine land was designed well. Even if they destroyed a part of the space barrier, it would slowly heal after a period of time like a beast's wound. Therefore, it was important to constantly attack the space barrier. The other shore realm warriors present took turns in attacking it, all day and night. As soon as Emily landed on the ground, she felt a vibration under her feet. Rumble. The vibration was extremely loud, as if something was collapsing. Not far away, Ramsey knelt down and pressed his ear to the ground. After a while, he said, "It seems that a collapse takes place in a huge space." Huge space. Emily's eyes flashed. Is this a universe that Zen had mentioned? Zen had revealed the divine land's internal structure once. It was not difficult for the other shore realm warriors to understand that. The methods of building a universe and keeping holy beings immortal were also spread in the source world. It might be a so-called holy being dying, Leopold said with a faint smile, looking disdainful. After all, in their eyes, holy beings were only at the true God realm, and they were simply not qualified to become their opponents. As the other shore realm warriors dissected it, heated discussions broke out on all floating islands. Boom, 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 boom. A muffled voice rang out from the sky and resounded through almost all of the regions in the divine land. The floating islands were in the middle of the divine land, and people there could hear the explosion very clearly. A holy being's universe has collapsed. Oh my goodness, which holy being was so unlucky? There is no war taking place in the universe, isn't it? Someone was actually able to cut off a holy being's connection with the universe. This has only happened once a few years ago. At that time, Lorena had killed a few holy beings by using the lethal fire magma. So what happened today reminded people in the powerful clans on the floating islands of that same event. Chapter 2429, The News of Nicholas's Death. On the floating island of the Dongfang clan. The grand and beautiful gardens stretched around the exquisite palace. It was lush and divine that you could wander all afternoon and get lost in its secret nooks. The palace itself was full of grandeur and beautiful paintings and frescoes. From afar, a smoke of incense ascended slowly. The booming sounds had Iris startled, making her stand up immediately. Looking up at the sky, deep concern filled her eyes. It had been a long time since the members of the alliance of the powerful clans had stepped into the Abyss Demon region, leaving them with no news about them. Hearing those booming sounds now delivered a piece of news back. Unfortunately, it was a bad one. It meant that some holy being had departed forever, and could never come back to life. Was this holy being part of the alliance of the powerful clans? If so, who was it? Even the holy being couldn't escape death. Where could her husband be now? Feeling ill at ease, Iris trotted back and forth in the palace. Clearly, she couldn't sit around and wait. Making up her mind quickly, she walked out of the palace. Meanwhile, in one of the other palaces of the Dongfang clan, several elders of the Dongfang clan gathered to set up a magic array. A huge chessboard lay in the center of the magic array, while a big drum stood inside it. As soon as the elders activated the magic array, the big drum thumped. Every time there was a rumble in the sky, a drumbeat also echoed its booming noise. On the chessboard, a small chess piece was jumping up and down. The holy beings' universes were distributed in different directions. They used this method to determine which universe had collapsed, noting from which direction the voice came from. The small piece would jump slightly on the chessboard each time the drum beat. It had been moving to the upper right bit by bit. Noticing the direction where the piece jumped, the elders of the Dongfang clan couldn't hide the ominous look on their faces. Could it be? One of the elders started to assume. But before he could say his thoughts out loud, another old man interrupted him, "No way. No matter who that holy being is, it's not our holy emperor." Absolutely. Our holy emperor has far more supernatural power than ordinary holy beings. How could he die so easily? The third old man concluded, shaking his head. However, as he was saying this, the small piece jumped all the way to the upper right. Everyone's expression went gloomy. "Perhaps, it's Woodruff of the Moon Clan," the fourth old man said. "Right, it is most likely to be Woodruff," another replied. Situated in the westernmost area, Woodruff's universe was marked as the rightmost spot on the chessboard. If the piece crossed the location of Nicholas's universe, then it must be Woodruff. It was their last ray of hope. But everyone knew how slim the chances were. Woodruff hadn't gone to the Abyss Demon region. Over the years, the entire Moon Clan including the War God Hall had remained low-key. Who could take his life now? Their Holy Emperor, Nicholas, had led many holy beings to explore the Abyss Demon region. In such a darn place, anything could happen. At last, the piece reached its destination on the chessboard, leaving it without any moves to the right. As the sky rumbled again, the drum beat and the piece jumped from its position on the chessboard and landed there again. Da, 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 seeing how the piece landed, two old men fell to the ground. What, another middle-aged man mumbled, having no idea how to deal with this matter. The movements of the piece caught him by surprise. Rushing out from the palace, a slightly younger true god roared wildly with his bad news, the Holy Emperor is dead. The Holy Emperor is dead. The true god went out and spread the news to every corner of the floating island, making sure not a single soul missed it. Hearing the true god's cry, Iris felt her legs had gone weak and finally gave up as she slumped on the ground. Of all the things she could imagine, this was probably the last thing she wanted to hear. If even Nicholas didn't survive, then who could protect her husband? Really? So the Holy Emperor's universe was broken. Why, he is so far the strongest man. How could he die? It must be just a rumor. Nonsense. Even with the news being announced, most of the disciples of the Dongfang clan chose not to believe this fact. Being the leader of the alliance of the powerful clans, the Dongfang clan had always been superior to the Sword clan and the Moon clan, and they had offended many people. Nicholas's death would definitely make the Dongfang clan decline as well. The Dongfang clan still had great prestige on the Ray Tree. However, Nicholas's successor couldn't be known anytime soon. If any of the other powerful clans started attacking them in retaliation, they would be undoubtedly dead. Nicholas's death was impossible to hide from the public. In fact, as soon as the vibration of the broken universe was transmitted, everyone was made aware of what was going on. Calculating the direction of the broken universe, the various powerful clans quickly came to a conclusion. The holy being who died is from the Dongfang clan. Ha ha ha, thank goodness. That Nicholas is now dead. What should we do now? Without the protection of the Dongfang clan, what would happen to our status? The people's reaction were a combination of everything. Some rejoiced, some felt upset, and some took pleasure in Nicholas's death. Meanwhile, Nicholas's universe was undergoing an unprecedented disaster. Nicholas had run his universe very well. Apparently, the other holy beings were not just afraid of his own strength. If he were to launch a war in a universe, then no one in the divine land would dare to meet his attack. 3,300 races, numerous worlds, and countless stars. There were countless talents among the secondary creatures. Some of them were not inferior to the outstanding warriors in the divine land, but they were unable to resist the collapsing crisis in the universe, even though their eyes were full of unwillingness and confusion. After the stars fell and the supreme worlds collapsed, it all ended up with numerous casualties. Watching helplessly, these secondary creatures could only feel devastated with what had occurred. In the swirl forest, standing in the yard, Harold raised his head to look up at the sky. Augustus, Hallett, Joy and the others were watching him from afar. Rumble, clasping his fingers, he couldn't hide a thoughtful expression that flashed on his face. His gesture would change each time he heard another roar, making him unfathomable. After a long while, he finally saw it. A glint flashed in his eyes as his conclusion was drawn. Who is it? It was Hallett who spoke first. With the universe collapsing, Hallett and Augustus were the most concerned about their own master Bromley. Although they weren't sure as to where Bromley was, the fact that his universe was safe meant that he was also still alive. A trace of doubt crossed Harold's eyes as if he suspected that he had miscalculated. Calculating by bending his fingers again, he commented, "The sounds are coming from the northwest. It is Nicholas's universe that collapsed." "So Nicholas is dead?" Augustus asked, leaving his mouth wide open. Hallett knew exactly what it meant. His eyes flashed with a dazzling light. If his universe has collapsed, he can no longer come back to life. They still had the chance to revive Mike, Zen's father, because the evolutionary universe was still running smoothly. Joy's mouth remained slightly open in shock after she heard the news. Chapter 2430, A Secret Cellar. During this time, Hallett and Harold were all over the place. They knew why Nicholas was planning a conquest of the Abyss Demon region. If Nicholas took control of the Abyss Demon region, he might take some drastic actions when he returned to the floating island. Everyone, including Hallett, Harold, and the other forces, saw this. That was how Hallett convinced the Moon Clan. The Moon Clan decided to side with the Sword Clan. If the Sword Clan were to fight against the alliance of the powerful clans, the Moon Clan would join them. Harold, on the other hand, was trying to find the godly geniuses who were scattered in the Divine Land. The Divine Land was so large, it wouldn't be easy to trace the godly geniuses. Even with the help of the evolutionary 50 to predict their whereabouts, the range was too large. But that didn't mean there was no trace. After all, the godly geniuses would break a rule of the slate if they tried to enter the Divine Land. And thanks to this, Harold would get an approximate time and area range of their coming. The godly geniuses in the universe were secondary creatures, but in terms of talent, they were comparable to the talents of the Divine Land. They were all impressive, which was why he wouldn't need a lot of time to find them. All preparations were carried out in an orderly way, but they hadn't expected Nicholas to die so suddenly. Since Nicholas is now dead, does it mean that the alliance of the powerful clans has lost the battle in the Abyss Demon region? Hallett asked, frowning. If that's the case, then it's good news, Augustus said, giggling. But Harold still looked conflicted. I don't think Nicholas is who we need to worry about, he said. The Dongfang clan that Nicholas represented was no doubt powerful, but it was probably not invincible by a large margin. The strength of several old geezers belonging to the Sword Clan and the Moon Clan couldn't be underestimated. These two great forces hadn't made a move for so many years and hadn't stepped out to fight against the alliance of the powerful clans. They were afraid of Nicholas, but also of the Yellow Emperor guards standing behind him. What should we do next? Asked Hallett. Harold thought about it for a while before replying, let's wait and see. Everyone nodded, but it was obvious that they were worried about Zen. It was a long way to the Evil Ghost region, but with Zen's immense speed, he should have already returned. But they weren't able to find him now. The Evil Ghost region was near the Abyss Demon region, but the latter's entrance was not in the Evil Ghost region, so there was only a small chance that Zen was involved in whatever was going on there. However, they were still a little worried. At the bottom of the Abyss Demon region, Samuel emerged from the coffin with a flash and turned to glare ferociously at it. He had failed to get the true demon body. It would probably be a good idea to get the precious body refined by Nicholas at the last moment. But that woman had unfortunately stopped him. He waved the Spear of Supreme Harmony, causing a strong, spatial wave to shoot out of the tip of the spear at the coffin. Samuel hadn't expected this strike to destroy the coffin. After all, the coffin had been here for many years. He had attacked it just to vent his anger. As far as he was concerned, the coffin was an illusion floating at the space entrance. His spear should have penetrated the coffin but failed to hurt it. But something unexpected happened in that moment. His spear hit the coffin with a muffled thunk. The sound shocked Samuel to the bone. From what he had experienced, Samuel understood that the holy beings weren't as strong as they made it out to be and would be in danger of losing their lives if they lowered their guard here. But now, the Spear of Supreme Harmony managed to push the coffin aside. There was a dark entrance to a cellar beneath the coffin. A row of orderly stairs extended downwards until they were engulfed in darkness. Samuel had no idea where they were heading to. Samuel's heart skipped a beat as he realized that he had discovered a great secret. This coffin is floating in the air. Anyone who's standing near it will be sucked into it. They cannot push it away. And although that woman is here all this time, it is impossible for her to push it away because the space law is prohibited in the Abyss Demon region. But what's hidden under the coffin? Samuel was a cautious person, which was why he stood at the entrance, hesitating. His eyes suddenly twinkled with a blue light that penetrated the darkness of the cellar. He seemed to see something in there that interested him greatly enough to make his mind up to enter the cellar. Standing on the steps of the cellar, he stabbed the spear at the bottom of the coffin and pulled it back into place. If the woman left the coffin and discovered this cellar, she would probably follow him. She was not weaker than him, and Zen and Rocher were difficult to deal with. But this way, he had a certain sense of relief. Thinking thus, he walked towards the deep end of the cellar. If Zen and the others were in the world covered with snow and ice in the coffin, they might be able to feel the shock of the entire coffin. As Samuel had moved the coffin, the snow on the mountains crumbled and collapsed. But since they were in the space beneath the ice volcano, they did not sense the changes outside. Zen was still talking to his mother about what had happened at the bottom of the chaos. He mentioned the grudges among the wild gods, the Yellow Emperor race, the Snake Goddess race, and the Nine Li race. Everyone's eyes widened at this, including Lorena and Sword Chen. Sword Chen had felt that his trip to the Divine Land had been strange, but compared to Zen's, it was just a drop in the bucket. So basically, the masters at the other shore realm of the snake goddess race and our 9Li race are outside the divine land, right? Lorena asked. Zen nodded and said, but the space barrier is blocking them from coming in. Timotheus, a 5-star 9Li guard, Lorena muttered. I have never heard of this man. Rosie smiled and said, we were young when we left the source world. Our 9Li race is full of talented people. The 5-star 9Li guards are powerful, but we have gotten many of them in our race in the past. Timotheus must have left our race a long time ago, which is probably why you haven't heard of him. Zen nodded. He knew that except for Leopold, no one else had heard of Lorena. His mother hadn't been born at the time. A 5-star 9Li guard should be able to deal with Layton, said Lorena. The 9Li race's mortal enemy was not Nicholas. Nicholas had only released Hamish from his seal in order to fulfill his own ambitions. The true enemy of the 9Li race was the Yellow Emperor guard Layton, who had performed the blood-splitting technique that had killed all the 9Li people. Chapter 2431, An Unexpected Event at the Entrance. Zen's information ignited a spark of hope within Lorena and Rosie. They knew it was difficult for the powerful masters to enter Divine Land, but it was only a matter of time before they succeeded in doing so. The powerhouses at the other shore realm would have broken the space barrier within 10 years. By then, they would be able to sweep away everything. The void was not meant for prolonged stays. Zen gave a rough introduction of what happened outside the Divine Land. Afterwards, Rosie instructed Samuel's clone to crack through the void. The cold fiends in the lair at the foot of the snow mountain had been reborn. Rosie very well knew what lay at the bottom of the snow mountain. After breaking through the void, Samuel's clone built a space channel and sent them directly to the top of the snow mountain. What's wrong with the snow mountain? Sword Chen observed something unusual while watching the snow mountain. Rosie similarly felt strange. Looks like an avalanche has struck. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. The snow blanket on the mountain was gone, revealing the bare hilltop covered only with a thin layer of snow. Rocher said, the fight in the void must have been too fierce. Maybe that caused the snow to slide. But that's impossible, Rosie exclaimed, shaking her head. The void at the bottom of the ice volcano is completely separated from the outside world. No amount of noise we made in the void can cause an avalanche. Maybe Samuel did this to vent his anger, guessed Sword Chen. That's a possibility, Rosie agreed with a nod. After staying for a short while, Rosie flew the group up. They soon left the coffin and returned to the bottom of the massive ice palace. Zen and Rocher left the coffin together. At the same time, the girl lying in the coffin disintegrated into specks of golden powder and vanished right before everyone's eyes. The true demon body was taken away by Zen and Rocher. Looking at the disappearing girl, Rosie felt a twinge of disappointment. I have fought so hard for the true demon body, but you two ended up getting it. Despite being a monster in the forbidden area, Rosie possessed her own memories and emotions. Through the years, she had been coming and going into the coffin multitudes of times, even dying in it many times. Then, she revived again in the black water. Considering her own inadequate strength, she supported the fiends and helped Sword Chen. She left no stone unturned in her quest to acquire the true demon body but ultimately failed, so her disappointment was definitely warranted. Lorena looked at her sister with eyebrows raised. If you don't have the true demon body, does that mean you can't leave the Abyss Demon region? Rosie nodded but then shook her head. Technically, I don't really need the true demon body to leave the Abyss Demon region, I only have to control the Forbidden Land. Upon uttering these words, she suddenly realized something. The same realization simultaneously occurred to Sword Chen, who asked, so, who is controlling the Abyss Demon region now? Zen and Rocher also looked a bit bemused. If the true demon body was a level 6 supreme treasure of belief in the Abyss Demon region, then they should by now have had the control of the region. However, the two girls showed no response. Zen was a witness to how Augustus had absolute control over the Swirl Forest and everything in it. In fact, Augustus could be considered the ruler of the Swirl Forest. Lorena, who had been lost in thought for a while, wondered aloud, is it because the true demon body is divided into two parts? If so, you can merge the two girls into one and let one of you control the Abyss Demon region. Zen and Rocher looked at each other and nodded. They had no reason to take control of the true demon body. They could even send the two girls to Rosie if she so desired. They summoned the girls and tried to separate them from their bodies. They attempted this for a long while but failed every single time. The two girls were also confused, as they did not know what Zen and Rocher were doing. In particular, the girl with red eyes only snuggled into Zen's arms. She seemed to understand what Zen was saying, but when Zen asked her something, she would shake her head fervently and refuse to cooperate. After all of the drama, Zen and Rocher had no choice but to give up. Although Rosie was disappointed, she still said in a voice full of hope, "Although you can't do it now, that doesn't mean that you won't succeed in the future. If any one of you manages to control the Abyss Demon region someday, come back and get me out." She had been trapped here for many years. It had been so long, and she dreamed of returning. "That's all we can do. Once we return, we'll figure out a way to get you out as soon as possible," Zen said with a nod. Rosie then led Zen and the others out of the ice palace. Before leaving, she took one last look at the coffin and found something odd. The coffin seemed to have moved a bit, but she did not know how and when the coffin's position changed. Even so, she did not dwell on it. Outside the ice palace, the fiends remained guarding the 7th stage of the Abyss Demon region. At that point, the fiends did not cut the same figure of terror that they once did. After being killed once, they needed some time to accumulate the faith energy, so they were presently too weak to fight. However, even if they were as strong as they used to be, none of them would dare to wage a war under Rosie's leadership. Under their watchful gazes, Zen and the others went back from the 7th stage to the 6th. The Abyss Demon region was vast. Even if they proceeded on their way without a hitch, it would still take them considerable time to return to the entrance. After 3 days, Rosie finally escorted Zen and the others to the entrance. On their way back, she and Lorena reminisced about the past. At the moment of parting, they were somewhat reluctant to go their separate ways. "Don't be afraid, Rosie. Trust me, you will leave here soon," Lorena consoled the other. Rosie nodded her head, trying to hold on to Lorena's unshakable faith in her eventual escape. Over the years, she had been resenting the Yellow Emperor guards and exhausting every means to rebuild the 9 race. With Lorena alive, Rosie knew that the other would play a pivotal role in the 9 race, so her resentment had gradually dissipated. "Zen, you must figure out a way after you go back," Rosie addressed Zen with a smile. "I will await your news in the Black Water. Trust me, I won't let you down," Zen replied, waving his hand towards Rosie. With a dark, sinister aura emanating from it, the gate of the Abyss Demon region appeared like the rabid, gaping mouth of a particularly terrifying monster. Dozens of transmission arrays were established outside the gate, which directly led to the floating islands. In order to monopolize the Forbidden Lands, powerful shackles were laid out at the entryways. All people could only enter the Forbidden Lands through the floating islands. "If we return, we have to enter a floating island from one of the transmission arrays," Rocher said. "However, there is another way, by breaking the restriction of the Abyss Demon region." He continued, "With our current strength, that will not be too difficult for us to do, but it will take some time." "Let's return through a floating island," Zen said faintly. With so many holy beings dead, they feared no one with their strength. Only the Yellow Emperor guards could threaten them, but by reading Nicholas's memory, Zen knew that Hamish had already left the floating island. Just as they had made their decision, an invisible wave suddenly struck, and a loud cracking sound was heard. Crack! Suddenly, the ground at the gate of the Abyss Demon region splintered. The earth in the fractured ground morphed into a massive head that was about 100,000 feet high, dust and smoke suffocatingly filling the air around the gruesome sight. The monstrous head opened its bloody mouth and tried to swallow the group. Rosie was stunned at the sight of the huge face. She looked over to her sister and companions and shouted, "Lorena! Everyone, you must leave quickly. I'll do what I can to block it." Chapter 2432, The One in Control. "Isn't that Samuel's face?" The moment Rocher saw the huge head, he was astonished. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed close behind Rosie, threatening to swallow her. Rosie waved her arm and released the brown force of primitive fear, which turned into a huge pillar and blocked the jaws from snapping any further. Although the head was made of mere soil, its power was way over the limit. Crack! An explosion rang out, as the pillar was snapped into two. Then the head took Rosie into its mouth. "It's just a man made out of soil. Why should I be afraid of it?" There was no way Lorena would watch her sister being swallowed. She immediately jumped, as a red light sprang out from her hand and aimed at the head. Phew! The crimson light all directly hit the middle of the head. Boom! The light all made a dull noise when it collided with the head. Suddenly a huge crack appeared in the head. Soon, half of the head was turned over, through which Rosie was able to escape. The head stopped moving, but a creepy laugh rang out. "Ha ha, leave the true demon body here and I will let you go." It was Samuel's voice. "It is really Samuel." Zen's eyes were wide with shock. Lorena raised her eyebrows, as her sharp eyes gleamed. She sneered, "Do you think you can keep us with your little trick?" "Can't I? Ha ha ha, let's find out." Samuel roared with laughter. Rumble. The quiet abyss demon region suddenly became alive. As the rumbling sound continued, they were stunned to see huge heads spring up one after another. The entrance to the abyss demon region was through a vast plain. By now, thousands of huge heads had suddenly appeared. These heads were squeezed together like large moving mountains, as they charged towards Zen and the others. This is truly astounding. What an incredible ability, Rosie said, as she watched all this, agape, and then soon realized something. I'm afraid the true demon body is not the key to controlling the abyss demon region. That's why Zen and Rocher were not able to control it. Until now, the abyss demon region may have been controlled by Samuel. Zen's eyes flashed in confusion. There is no way Samuel is able to control the abyss demon region. I still remember that back then, Pascal, Zen said as he trailed off. When Nicholas employed Furnace of Dark and Light, Zen didn't really bother about Pascal. He had assumed that he was sucked into the furnace and died. Rocher frowned and said, Samuel secretly brought Pascal into his inner world. He could only use Pascal to control the abyss demon region. That is why Samuel kept him alive. Rumble. Those heads rushed towards them. It sounded like herds of trampling elephants. They are merely earthen heads. They can't possibly hurt us, said Lorena. She had no intention of retreating. She didn't want to leave her sister alone here. She planned to fight together as a team. Since she wouldn't budge, Zen, Rocher and Sword Chen would not leave either. If the abyss demon region is really under Samuel's control, then it is difficult to defeat him. I'm not going to die. Trust me, sister, it is best that you leave as soon as possible. Rosie worriedly said, but Lorena would not move. The red light in her hand constantly blinked and the light all was held tightly in her hand. She was ready to hit those huge heads. Rosie turned towards Samuel's replica. After receiving the orders from her, the replica pointed the spear horizontally and a space passageway appeared. Soon Lorena, Zen and the others were forcefully taken to the transmission array. But Lorena had already made up her mind. She gritted her teeth and decided to charge again. Samuel can sever the connection between the two forms of true demon body. Even if Zen and Rocher are united, their strength won't be enough to bring down Samuel. Think about yourself. If not, consider for Zen. Do you want him to die with you? Rosie demanded of Lorena. Lorena was about to rush out, but she stopped in her tracks at her sister's words. She had every doubt about Samuel's capabilities and talents. But judging from the current situation, she had to reluctantly agree that he controlled the abyss demon region. In fact, Samuel was yet to show his presence. Despite his absence, he was able to launch such a destructive attack. The situation would be unimaginable once he arrived. But Lorena was totally dismayed after she weighed the situation. She was reluctant to leave her sister alone to deal with Samuel. Don't forget that I am a monster now. There is no way I can die. I'll wait for you to come back, said Rosie calmly. Standing on tiptoe, she flew towards the giant heads, and soon disappeared in their midst. More heads were rushing towards the entrance. We should leave, said Sword Chen urgently. They had to leave right away. That was the only choice they were left with. If they chose to stay, it would be evident to face death. The thing was, Rosie could come to life again after she died, but not the others. Lorena clenched her fists, as a sense of helplessness overtook her. Thinking of her son, she had no choice but to leave. She turned around and stepped into the transmission array. Before those huge heads came charging at them, a power of space flashed through the transmission array and enveloped everyone, quickly sending them into the space passageway. The moment they entered the space passageway, the heads managed to crush the transmission array. In the past few days, the Dongfang clan, the Mu clan, the Tang clan, the Leng clan, the Fang clan, and all the other powerful clans that belong to the alliance were sitting tight with tension. The reason for their strain was that Nicholas's universe had been completely destroyed. The guards guarding the transmission array were also restless. If those rumors were to be believed, then their good days were coming to an end. The worst outcome was evident. If the Sword Clan and the Moon Clan joined their forces together, they would be able to turn upside down all the floating islands that belong to the Alliance. The clan's elders had also intimated the guards to pay close attention to the transmission arrays leading to the Abyss Demon region. Crack, crack, a guard of the Tang clan heard strange crackling sounds. He looked towards the source of the sounds and found that the sounds were coming from the transmission array leading to the Abyss Demon region. Waves of space fluctuation spread out from the transmission array. It's from the Abyss Demon region. They are coming back. Go and inform the elders. Quick, the guard shouted loudly, immediately attracting everyone's attention. However, the space fluctuation within this transmission array only lasted for a while before it shattered into pieces. The guards and some of the disciples were stunned to see the scene. The sound was not because someone had returned, but because the transmission array on the other end had been destroyed. What happened? Someone has destroyed the transmission array on the other side. So, Holy Emperor won't be coming back. This was not just happening to the Tang clan. All the transmission arrays leading to the Abyss Demon region on the floating islands were destroyed, including the clans outside the alliance of the rich and powerful clans. Even the Moon Clan and the Sword Clan were no exception. Chapter 2433, Pearson Dongfang. The fact the transmission arrays were damaged was not much of an issue. After all, the restrictions at the entrances of the Forbidden Lands were built by the wealthy clans on the floating islands. They would be able to rebuild the transmission arrays at any time. However, the destruction of the arrays delivered a bad news. The Dongfang clan's transmission array had also been destroyed. In the moment the array had been damaged, the space passageway had separated as if an azure dragon had sliced through the sky. At that time inside the passageway, several light spots were moving at incredibly high speed. With the transmission array being destroyed, the passageway had been altered, and the path of the light spots deviated towards a square on the floating island of the Dongfang clan. Nothing was there to stop the projectiles from crashing directly into the center of the square. The collision caused a massive boom to echo across the island, and shake the ground. A large crater now consumed more than half the square. The impact had caused the island to sink by 20 to 30 feet before slowly bouncing back into place. All the guards had scrambled to get away in time to avoid being squashed. It took a long moment for the guards to regain their senses and inch their way to the edge of the pit to gaze inside. Amazingly, 4 people stood within the center of the crater. The only person any of them recognized was Rocher. Rocher had traveled to and from the Forbidden Lands under his false name Lowell for the past several years. Lowell, you're back, one of the guards called. What happened in the Forbidden Land? How is the Holy Emperor? Someone else asked. Hurry up, go get the elders of our clan. Another guard said, pushing the person next to him into motion. The guard stumbled and made it a few steps before he realized there was no need to get the elders. With the force of the impact, the elders had already been alerted and were flying towards the spectacle. Among them, there were demi-holy beings, consummate true gods, and a single holy being. The holy being went by the name Pearson Dongfang. He stayed in the Ray Tree all year round. He had experienced much in life and was enjoying a mass amount of respect from the other clan members. He seldom moved about the island, though, so people rarely saw much of him over the years. When the news of Nicholas's death had spread, the Dongfang clan decided to ask Pearson Dongfang to take charge in clan matters again. As the strongest clan, it was only normal for the Dongfang clan to have a holy being to lead them. Casting a glance at Lorena and the others, Pearson Dongfang asked, "Who are you? Why did you leave the Abyss Demon region and trespass into the transmission array of our clan?" Among the 4 people, there was a demi-holy being, 2 consummate true gods, and a woman whose cultivation base Pearson Dongfang couldn't identify. Despite Nicholas's death, the Dongfang clan still held rule over this property. Especially now that Pearson Dongfang had emerged from his self-imposed seclusion and taken over as leader, he simply had no reason to take these people seriously. Lorena's face settled into a cold mask. She could only think of Rosie in this moment. She knew Rosie had spoken the truth when she told her she could not die. But if the Abyss Demon region was truly under Samuel's control, what kind of torture would she have to endure? Lorena didn't have the heart to imagine what she might suffer. She had been in a decent mood from meeting Zen and obtaining the blood body, but now her mind had sunken into a pit of despair and anger. She didn't care for the questioning of this Pearson Dongfang character. When none of them spoke, Pearson Dongfang scowled down at them. Before he could throw a tantrum at the lack of respect, someone else spoke. "Lowell, you are back," a middle-aged man beside Pearson Dongfang said in surprise. "Winthrop, you know one of these people?" Pearson Dongfang asked. Winthrop Dongfang was the eldest of a branch of the Dongfang clan. He also happened to be Iris's father, Rocher's father-in-law. Although Winthrop Dongfang had the cultivation base of a demi-holy being and was extremely powerful, he usually remained in the Ray Tree all year round and seldom came to the floating island, just like Pearson Dongfang. He had been invited this time for the same reason as Pearson Dongfang. "Father-in-law," Rocher greeted, folding his hands one over the other and bowing his head in respect. Winthrop Dongfang seemed pleased by the action. Many of the clan members were strong warriors, so it had proven difficult for Winthrop Dongfang to find such an excellent match for his daughter. He lucked out with finding Rocher. Over the past years, Lowell had risen rapidly to fame and gained great appreciation from Nicholas. He could be nearly as powerful as Troy already. Because of him, Winthrop Dongfang's influence in the Ray Tree region had grown, and thanks to that, even other Dongfangs in his branch were much more respected. Naturally, he was glad to see Lowell come back safely. Now that you've returned, tell us, how are the others of the Alliance? What about our holy beings and other clan members? Where are they? He then proceeded to list many names. Listening to him patiently, Rocher waited for him to finish. When his father-in-law was finished, he calmly replied, all members of the Alliance were killed. Holy Nicholas died too. Some holy beings were forced back to the universes. The rest unfortunately all died. What? The word was barely whispered. Winthrop Dongfang was astonished. He could barely find the words to express his shock. Everyone else was dumbfounded by the news. After the collapse of Nicholas's universe, they had expected the Alliance to suffer a great loss. They hadn't expected it to be so severe, though. Speak plainly, brat, how exactly did Holy Nicholas die? Why did he die, and yet you could come back unharmed? Pearson Dongfang demanded. Rocher might have joined the Dongfang clan with a single purpose in mind, but he and Iris had become married and Winthrop Dongfang was very good to him. For that reason he now found himself in a dilemma, so he just raised his eyebrows and chose to say nothing. Zen could feel the pressure Rocher was being placed under. It was not his fault, Zen knew. Rocher had done enough and had sacrificed too much. However, the truth would come to light sooner rather than later. Zen spoke loudly and clearly. He could come back because of his strength. Nicholas proved to not be strong enough, so he died. You have lived for many years. Do you not understand such a simple thing? As a well-known holy being, Pearson Dongfang felt properly chastised to be lectured by Zen, a mere consummate true god. He was on the verge of exploding with fury. Winthrop Dongfang decided to bring the conversation back to the most important subject. Lowell, how did Holy Nicholas die? Hearing the question, Pearson Dongfang reined in his anger and waited for the answer. Of course he was killed by Rocher and myself, Zen said with a faint smile. The expressions of everyone present around the pit morphed into ones of confusion and disbelief. There was simply no way what Zen said was true. They refused to believe it. Zen was simply a consummate true god, and yet he dared to talk this nonsense on the floating island of the Dongfang clan. Everyone thought either he was an idiot, or he had some trick he relied on to be so arrogant. This made them curious beyond a doubt. What could Zen have that gave him the upper hand? Who do you think you are to be so? Pearson Dongfang sputtered and finally lost his temper. He reached out one hand to grab Zen. The moment he'd moved, though, Lorena moved to stand before Zen to protect him. She would not stand by as someone threatened her son in this way. You talk too much. She raised her hand and a crimson light all shot from her palm and cut towards the old man with a harrowing shriek. The sound made everyone's ears throb. The crimson light all might be only 3 inches long, but it was fierce. The aura it contained made the holy being feel a slight amount of fear. Pearson Dongfang hadn't expected that someone from these 4 would dare to fight him and attempt to kill him. It was too late for him to dodge the attack, though. Gritting his teeth, he brought both hands before him and made to snatch the awl. He grabbed at it 6 or 7 times. Each grab could only slow down the light all little by little. His face became increasingly stormy and the scowl pulled the corners of his lips down. The power of the crimson light all didn't seem to be weakening. It kept coming for him as if it were death itself. The overwhelming feeling of danger had Pearson Dongfang nearly use all of his internal momentum to summon a golden bell shadow to shield himself. Dong! The sound of the light all hitting the bell reverberated through the ground and up everyone's feet. The toll was so loud that people on floating islands nearby could hear it clearly. An unmistakable cracking sound could be heard, and fissures began to crawl across the bell. The bell had only slowed down the light all for a short moment before the bell disintegrated and became fine powder on the ground. With a pained grunt, the light all burrowed through Pearson Dongfang's chest and burst out his back leaving a triangular hole behind. With a single move, Lorena had nearly mortally wounded Pearson Dongfang. Chapter 2434, Breaking the Jade Harp Array. The members of the Dongfang clan were shocked. Since Nicholas died, they had relied heavily on Pearson, but to their surprise, Pearson couldn't deflect a single blow from his opponent. A demi-holy being from the Dongfang clan frowned slightly. A small jade harp appeared in his hand. He raised the jade harp and yelled, "Set an array." The jade harp trembled. The entire floating island of the Dongfang clan also started shaking. The Dongfang clan had been the most powerful clan in the Divine Land for years, so their island was well equipped. It appeared to be the same as those of other clans, but the interior was woven with the branches of the Ray tree. The branches were combined with the divine textures and formed a large array within the island. Someone once said that the large array would never be used because no one dared to stir up trouble on the Dongfang clan's island. However, one could never predict what life had in store for you. A month ago, everyone in the Divine Land followed the Dongfang clan's lead, and it held high status among all the clans. 1 month later, however, it was in jeopardy. Buzz. As the floating island vibrated, rings of light spread across every inch of the island. Almost every disciple of the Dongfang clan saw the light. Some disciples who were far away from the scene had no idea what was going on, but they knew what the light meant and stepped into it without hesitation. Plop, plop, all the consummate and ordinary true gods stepped into the rings of light and got down on one knee. At the same time, they offered the faith energy in their own inner worlds and started murmuring something. The Dongfang clan enjoys everlasting prosperity. We control the sun. They were chanting the ancestral doctrine of the Dongfang clan. As they occupied the Ray tree, they were the first in the Divine Land to see the sun every day. Therefore, they claimed that the sun belonged to their clan. The turbulent faith energy quickly passed through the rings of light under their feet and gathered on the jade harp which was in the demi-holy being's hand. At this point, the jade harp erupted with terrifying power. The shock wave of power spread out, radiating on the floating islands below. Various clans, like the Han clan, the Leng clan and the Tang clan, gathered and started whispering among themselves. Everyone raised their heads to look up, their faces solemn with concern. It is so powerful, it has to be from the Dongfang clan. But what's going on? Are they facing a strong enemy? Who is so bold as to attack the most powerful clan? Hey, don't forget Nicholas is dead now. If the Moon clan and the Sword clan want to wage a war, who in the Dongfang clan can stop them? But the Dongfang clan is rich and powerful. So what? They are like abandoned puppies now. The members of other powerful clans were gloating, except those who belong to the alliance of powerful clans. This is the first time we are using the smoky sea array after it was built, said the demi-holy being holding the jade harp. If you surrender, I will remove the array. If you resist, I will show no mercy. Winthrop, who was also standing in a ring of light and offering the faith energy in his inner world, said, Lowell, I don't know what happened to you in the Abyss Demon region, but we don't need to go this far, as long as we clarify certain things. Roche finally decided to step forward and ignore his conflicting feelings. He bowed to Winthrop and said, I am sorry, father-in-law. My real name is not Lowell. My name is Roche Wa, and I am from the evolutionary universe. Naturally, Winthrop was surprised. As a matter of fact, he had also suspected Roche's identity all this while. The Dongfang clan was quite conservative when it came to marriage. Most of the people married their clansmen, and very few married those from the outside. But Iris was determined to marry Lowell, and Winthrop could do nothing to convince her otherwise. Who would have thought that Lowell was working for the sworn enemy of the Dongfang clan? Your real name is Roche. That guy, he just said that he and you killed our holy emperor together. Is that true? Winthrop couldn't control the quiver in his voice. Roche pursed his lips and said seriously, yes. You mongrel, you are talking nonsense. Since you don't regret it, I will turn you to dust. The demi-holy being who held the jade harp finally made his move. As the jade harp shook gently, the strings emitted multicolored lights, which looked like ripples on a lake. There was a unique charm and a strong killing intent hidden in them. Well, since you don't believe me, I will prove it to you. Zen floated up in the air, sneering coldly. When I stepped into the time sea, I thought that one day I would slaughter your clan's floating island. But circumstances change with the passage of time. Some old scores have been evened. I don't want to destroy the island anymore. As he spoke, a long sword appeared magically in his hand. Many red lotuses with devastating auras spilled out from the blade of the sword. When the people from the Dongfang clan saw the red lotuses, they blinked hard. How could he possess such terrifying power? Is he really a consummate true god? Even a holy being can't wield such power, right? Zen hovered in midair, holding the long sword in his hand. He had no intention of making a move. You arrogant jerk. Go to perdition. The demi-holy being began to play the strings. The previously mild music suddenly became hurried, wild and full of killing intent. The lights emitted from the strings turned into colorful swords and zoomed towards Zen ferociously. But Zen appeared unfazed. He neither dodged nor defended himself, allowing them to attack him. Boom, boom, boom. The attack from the light was no less than a blow by a holy being. The large array of the Dongfang clan was set up based on the Ray tree. And it was really effective and powerful. But their opponent, Zen, was formidable. Hundreds of light swords hit Zen's body, but he was unharmed. What the heck? Winthrop and the others just stared at Zen floating nonchalantly in midair. This method can even kill holy beings. But why is it not working on him? He seems completely unaffected by it. What a mighty fellow. The entire Dongfang clan was dumbfounded. Even the demi-holy being, who was playing the jade harp, was getting more and more vicious. He started playing the jade harp more and more quickly. I don't think you can block them all. The demi-holy being roared. Zen didn't pay attention to him but lowered his head and said to Rocher, "It's your turn." When the light swords attacked Zen, most of the energy was transferred to Rocher's body, leaving only golden halos on Zen's body. Rocher nodded, pulled out his soaring snake sword and got ready to defend. When the first chill collected at the sword tip, Rocher turned the soaring snake sword and suddenly jabbed it into the ground. Countless ice flowers circled Rocher. Gradually, they all poured down along the soaring snake sword and into the ground. The ice flowers were able to solidify all kinds of energies. When a massive amount of ice flowers fell onto the ground, they instantly condensed and froze the branches of the Ray tree distributed on the floating island. The branches of the Ray tree supported the smoky sea array. If all the branches were frozen, the array would collapse just like that. Before long, the power that had gathered on the jade harp disappeared without a trace. Chapter 2435, Mixed Feelings. The rings of light that shimmered under the feet of the disciples on the floating island disappeared. There was also a sudden chill coming from underground. And just like that, the two consummate true gods had broken the sea mist array. Several demi-holy beings were shocked at this development. Pearson, who Lorena had seriously hurt, was also stunned. He met these two formidable young warriors only a few days after he had reappeared in the public. A strange panic gripped his heart. This era seemed to no longer belong to those who were old. A figure clad in green approached them from a distance. It was none other than Iris. She rushed over to them as soon as she heard the noise in the transmission array. When she was on her way, the demi-holy being had activated the array. She had had to stop and contribute her faith energy to it. The moment the array disappeared, she started to make her way to them again. The first person she saw was Rocher. Lowell. Uncontrollable joy took hold of Iris's heart. She had been restless these past days, and now, she finally had her husband back. "Iris," Rocher uttered. Iris was about to go straight to Rocher, but Winthrop stopped her. "Iris, do you know who Lowell is?" Iris looked at her father and then at Rocher. A look of understanding crossed her face. Rocher's identity must have been exposed. Iris obviously knew that Rocher was not who he claimed to be. When Rocher had carried her and run in that abandoned city, she could not help becoming infatuated with him. That was why she had helped him hide his identity so that he could successfully infiltrate the Dongfang clan. "I know," Iris replied calmly. Winthrop looked equal parts shocked and disappointed. But he recovered enough to ask, "Do you know he has harmed our clan?" Iris glanced at Rocher and nodded. I know that too." Iris hadn't known what Rocher was about to do, but she knew that he wasn't pretending to be a part of the Dongfang clan for fun. She knew that he must have something important to deal with. But Iris had made up her mind that no matter what happened, she would be on Rocher's side. Winthrop stared at his daughter unhappily. "Do you know that he has killed Nicholas? If this news were to spread, everyone would only believe that my daughter is the cause for the Holy Emperor's death. It will bring disgrace on our clan." Iris was amazed at what Winthrop was saying. In her eyes, no matter how powerful Rocher was, it was impossible for him to kill Nicholas. She looked back at Rocher, confused. She hoped that he would deny what Winthrop was saying, but he only looked at her silently and did not say anything. So it was true. Iris was feeling so many mixed emotions in this moment. She had thought she would always forgive Rocher no matter what he did. But this time, he had killed the Holy Emperor of the Dongfang clan. Nicholas was God to the members of the Dongfang clan and no one had dared disobey him. Shock ran through Iris, blanking her mind to the point where her knowledge of the workings of the Dongfang clan didn't allow her to come to a decision. Rocher looked at Iris beseechingly. He had foreseen what would happen the moment he had told Nicholas his identity. Lorena sneered, "This girl looks pretty. How can she shame the Dongfang clan? I think she has done that to save your Dongfang clan." Winthrop glared at Lorena before saying, "I know I'm not powerful enough, but you can't humiliate me like that." Lorena shook her head and said, "The hatred between our Luo clan and the Dongfang clan is such that the Luo clan would do everything in their power to kill Nicholas and destroy all the members of the Dongfang clan. Winthrop, Pearson, and the others were startled at Lorena's words. The Luo clan members were capable of doing that if they made up their minds. We won't do that though for the sake of this little girl, Lorena said, blinking and flashing a smile at Iris. She knew all about Rocher's sneaking into the Dongfang clan, and she also knew that he had done a lot for the Luo clan, which was why she was now intervening on his behalf. So this means that the girl is the savior of the Dongfang clan. Am I wrong? Lorena said. In fact, her words and logic were unreasonable. But the truth was nothing more than a stepping stone of strength in the divine land. The Dongfang clan had lost its imposing aura and had no way of reasoning with Lorena. They might probably get killed if they put Iris in an awkward situation. Lorena was, in fact, threatening them. The members of the Dongfang clan were silent. They knew they could not refute Lorena's words and didn't dare argue. Lorena winked at Rocher. Rocher walked up to Iris and took her hand. Iris hesitated. She looked at her father and then Rocher, before finally deciding to leave with Rocher. Lorena's eyes then fell on Pearson. Another thing, I think you have to go with me to the Ray Tree. What kind of thing? Pearson said coldly. He just wanted to send this group of people away as soon as possible. My husband died, and you suppressed him in the Ray Tree. It is time to return him now, Lorena said equally coldly. Zen's eyes flashed at his mother's words. It had been a long time since he had entered the divine land, but he hadn't known his father's whereabouts until now. If his father had died, he would have been reincarnated in the evolutionary universe. Pearson's eyes flashed, but he knew he had no strength to resist this woman. It was a while before he finally nodded. He stood up and led the others to the other side of the square. Half of the transmission arrays on the square were destroyed, and among the other half, the widest transmission array was the one that led to the Ray Tree. Led by Pearson, Zen and his companions stepped into the transmission array. After Zen and the others left, the members of the Dongfang clan were relieved, thinking that they had gotten rid of them for the time being. Will they attack Pearson on the Ray Tree? It's of no use relying on the Ray Tree. Pearson, with his strength, is no match for them. I'm afraid our Dongfang clan will be in trouble this time. That woman said she won't destroy our clan. But the Luo clan has a grudge against us. I don't think they will let us off. The disciples of the Dongfang clan were anxious and upset. Chapter 2436, Mike. The Ray Tree was located in the easternmost area of the Divine Land. The giant tree had twisted roots and gnarled branches, the longest root having penetrated several large regions. The trunk of the tree extended to the sky, forming a huge cloud-like cover. Standing above this cloud cover, one could see a vast sea of clouds in any direction. Compared to the Sunrise Tree, which was also known as the non-combat zone of the Sword Clan, the Ray Tree looked more charming and magnificent. The Dongfang Divine City was built on the top of the cloud cover. A cloud-capped tower stood at the center of the Dongfang Divine City. A huge transmission array was built on the top of the tower, and was connected to the floating island of the Dongfang clan. The qualifications that were needed to enter the floating island were few, but there were many disciples of the Dongfang clan. Every year, there would be a number of outstanding talents who wanted to enter the floating island of the Dongfang clan by climbing the tower. To the members of the Dongfang clan, entering the tower meant success. Buzz. The transmission array at the top of the tower began to glow. And then, Pearson walked out. 6 consummate true gods guarded 2 sides of the tower. They played significant roles in the Dongfang clan. The news of Nicholas's death had not spread to the Ray Tree, which was located at quite a distance from the floating island. The only shortcut here was the transmission array, so it was easy enough to keep the news a secret from them. But the principal members of the Dongfang clan knew about it. Master Pearson, what are you doing here? The head of the guards asked, concerned. He had noticed the wound on Pearson's body. Lorena, Zen and the others emerged one after the other. Who are they? The head of the guards asked, surprised. Pearson shook his head and said to him, Nick, don't ask too many questions. Just show them the way. Nick frowned at how weak Pearson looked and refused to lead them inside. Master Pearson, who are they? You know outsiders are not allowed to enter the Ray Tree. Nick said coldly. The Dongfang clan had held a dominant position for so many years. How could they allow ordinary people to break into the Ray Tree? It was hard to tell which cultivation base Lorena belonged to. Zen and Rocher were both consummate true gods. Sword Chen, a demi-holy being, was the strongest among them. Nick thought they were too weak to run wild on the Ray Tree. That was why he firmly refused Pearson's request. The 6 guards surrounded Zen and his companions with hostility. Lorena frowned and said to Pearson, tell them to behave themselves. Don't force me to kill them. She had been restraining herself ever since her return to the floating island. And that was because Nicholas had fulfilled his promise by leaving the treasure body to her. Otherwise, she would have killed all the members of the Dongfang clan. But now that she was in a hurry to see her husband, how could she waste time with these guards? Nick, don't meddle in this. Just lead us to the prison island, Pearson commanded anxiously. But Nick was stubborn. He could tell there was something wrong with Pearson and looked at him more closely. Master Pearson, as the guard of the transmission array, I will never allow people with unknown origins to break in. Even if Holy Nicholas were here, I would ask him. Nick had barely finished speaking when a ray of crimson light pierced through his head. Before he could realize what was happening, he fell to the floor and rolled down the golden stairs of the tower with multiple clunks. Lorena raised her hand. Several spooky-looking lights crackled at her fingertips. The 5 remaining guards looked at Lorena, dumbfounded, their mouths wide open. Pearson closed his eyes, pain etched on his face, and said, I told you not to ask too many questions. The people on the Ray Tree knew nothing of what had transpired on the floating island, and still thought themselves to be the most powerful. They didn't know that the Dongfang clan had already declined. Iris clenched Rocher's hand and bit her lip. Watching a member of her clan die had caused her to pale. She was under great pressure. Show me the way. One more word and I won't spare you, Lorena said coldly. She looked murderous. At this, the guards finally realized that Pearson had brought back some people who were probably unparalleled. They were quite confused. Why had these people broken into the floating island of the Dongfang clan and forced Pearson to take them to the Ray Tree? But since they were too weak to fight back, they could do nothing but obey Lorena and lead the way. The fall of Nick's body from the tower had attracted the attention of many members of the Dongfang clan. They looked at him sullenly and unfriendly but dared not say anything more. The Ray Tree was so tall that if one were to jump from the top, it would take a few days for them to fall to the ground. The Dongfang clan had established many transmission arrays throughout the Ray Tree. The guards led Zen and his group into the transmission array that led to the prison island, a place where the Dongfang clan imprisoned important prisoners. It sat at the bottom of the Ray Tree. Some prisoners had betrayed the Dongfang clan, and some had offended them. A prison cell stood at the center of the prison island, which was rather strange. It was, in fact, a half-dead person that was locked up in the cell. Every time this half-dead man came close to dying, a large array in the prison would be activated. This array contained the life godly way and would pour a little life force into the body of the half-dead man, making sure that he didn't die. The people of the Dongfang clan knew that this prisoner was the holy being of the Luo clan. Killing a holy being was a complicated business. Both of his body and universe had to be destroyed. The Dongfang clan could not destroy the evolutionary universe now, which was why Mike had been imprisoned here. They would neither let him come back to life nor let him die, because once he died, he would soon be reborn in the evolutionary universe. The Dongfang clan was not the first to use this way of imprisoning a holy being. Soon, the group, led by Pearson, arrived at the prison gate. Open the gate, Pearson shouted. The 2 guards standing at the gate were only mid-rank true gods. They dared not disobey Pearson's orders. They hurriedly opened the gate, which creaked as it swung inwards. The gate had not been opened for many years and a strong, indescribable smell of blood spread through the air. Zen was the first to step inside, only to see a broken body lying at the center of a large emerald green array. It was none other than his father, Mike Luo. Chapter 2437, Reunion. Zen openly stared at the half-dead man for a moment and silently searched for the familiarity he had before, in his heart. There were really times when Zen himself was totally confused. Was his father the man in front of him? He tried hard, searching for his memories of him, but everything seemed blurry. Phew. Before Zen could do anything, Lorena had already taken a big stride towards Mike and wordlessly took him into her arms. Buzz. A sound reverberated at the moment she embraced Mike. The array around him reacted. And an abnormally powerful force surged at Mike. It's soul suppression, exclaimed Sword Chen as he wrinkled his brows. It was by no means easy to suppress a holy being, especially a powerful one like Mike. A cold light flashed in Lorena's eyes. She was about to destroy the visible array in prison. There was a hint of impatience in her demeanor. No, don't do that. If you destroy the array, Mike will die immediately, Pearson hastily cautioned. He stood still at the gate, looking so anxious. Apparently, it was the array that kept Mike alive all this time. What to do then? Lorena countered back in a cold voice. She refused defeat in not knowing what they should do to bring him back to life. I will remove the soul suppression, suggested Pearson. Then, he decisively sauntered towards the edge of the array. Wordlessly, he stretched out his hand into the array and started manipulating it. Buzz. With the sudden contact, the array on the ground created a quick flash, and the force suppressing Mike's soul gradually disappeared. The instant the force swiftly dissipated, Mike's body soon started to shake violently, making them feel more anxious as moments went by. After a short while, Mike finally woke up. With a blank look in his eyes, he merely stared at Lorena's face for a long time, not uttering a single word as his eyes were getting brighter and brighter. All the people surrounding him couldn't help waiting, with great anticipation mixed with anxiety. "Lorena, is it really you? Am I dreaming?" A soft mumble came from Mike's throat, almost a whisper. He had been imprisoned over the years, and his vital energy had been notably weak. Even his soul had decayed after being suppressed for such a long time. "My dear." Silent tears swiftly rolled down from Lorena's eyes. "No, you are not dreaming. Nicholas has been killed, and his universe has also collapsed." A bright burst of light flashed in Mike's eyes, and instantly his voice became more powerful. "Really? Nicholas is dead? Who killed him?" Although Lorena was crying, a gratified smile gently appeared on the corner of her mouth. She looked up at Zen, who was beside the door of the prison, and prompted, "It is your son." "No, our son." Almost exhausted, Mike tried hard, raising his head and gazed at the entrance of the prison. Crack. He hadn't moved for many years. So the moment he raised his head, his back spine naturally made a series of strange sounds. "Father!" Zen called out earnestly. Excitement filled his mind. At the first sight of Mike, he quite felt he was a stranger to him. Staring at him, he couldn't link the man in front of him with his father. In his impression, his father was full of vitality and had broad shoulders, unlike this man before him now. As he observed Mike intently, the expression in the other's eyes finally reminded him of his father. Though he could vaguely recall it, there was a resemblance. Whoosh! Zen hurriedly strode over and quickly knelt on one knee in front of his father. Like him, Mike also gazed at his son with a pleasant smile on his lips. He nodded slightly and said, "After we parted from each other when you were a child, it's not our first meeting." "Right, I once saw you in the evolutionary universe," Zen shared. Mike took a deep breath and replied, "Good. When Bromley proposed the idea, I had a bit doubt that you would make it, but it turns out that you have done better than I thought." The plan that Mike, Bromley, and Holy J made was more like a desperate attempt than a hope. They really had no choice but to take the risk. However, Zen's performance far exceeded the expectations of everyone. It was unmatched in comparison to anyone. Even Harold hadn't thought that Zen would kill Nicholas in the Abyss Demon region by accident. Zen firmly held Mike's rough hand and blurted excitedly, "I never forget what you taught me when I was young." Mike gently shook his head, and sympathetically said, "It's tough for you. I wish I could make you a carefree playboy on the floating island, just like those powerful clans. But you were born with countless adversity and tortures in your life. Don't blame me." "How could I blame you?" Zen uttered in a voice soft with affection after becoming speechless for a moment when he heard how regretful his father was. From the eastern region to here, Zen had indeed suffered a lot. Nonetheless, the trial was some excellent training. He was like a raw jade that finally turned into a sharp sword after all series of hardships he met along the way. As the family of three gathered inside the prison, they couldn't help but reminisce about the past as they talked in a low voice. They all sighed with deep emotion. 5 minutes later, Mike suddenly urged, "Lorena, kill me." Lorena was surprised at his unexpected request. "Why? My body has already become decadent and it is hard to repair. Better to be reborn in the universe. In that case, I will be able to recover quickly," he explained reflectively, making an effort to sound reassuring. In addition to that, there were still memories of his soul in the universe. He was going to find them bit by bit. Lorena pursed her lips and hesitated. Her eyes danced with slight helplessness. Although she fully knew that killing him was only for bringing him back to life, she couldn't bear to end his life with her own hands. She immediately averted her gaze from Mike. She cast a glance at Zen, who, like her, was also hesitant. "Let me do it, master," suggested Sword Chen with a casual smile on his face as he hastily stepped forward. "At most, Harold will blame me." Mike trained his gaze at Sword Chen and then towards Rocher, who was standing not far away. He nodded with a smile. He was the one who created the two, so he was very familiar with them. Soon after, without an ounce of hesitation, Sword Chen brandished his sword to slash the light that immediately broke the array in prison. The broken array could no longer give Mike life energy, so he quickly lost his breath and died. Lorena snapped back from her daze and carefully put Mike's body in the Sumeru space. The dead body wasn't Mike anymore. The real Mike would be reborn in the evolutionary universe, but she wouldn't just leave the dead body here. After she had done putting away the dead body, she glanced at Pearson and stated coldly, "Zen, let's go." Pearson, on the other hand, finally felt relieved when Lorena and her companions started leaving. He definitely feared that this group of fierce people would destroy the Ray Tree in a fit of anger after witnessing Mike's tragic plight. At the same time, the bottom of the Abyss Demon region was continually roaring. Rumble. Then a lofty palace rose from the ground like a fast-growing tree. The fiends below were all ashen with fear, having no idea what was going on. They were all startled. "That woman has left, hasn't she?" someone exclaimed. "What about the others? Is there anyone still in the Ice Palace?" interjected by another. "Who is it? How powerful this person is to build this palace in this way?" All the fiends looked up and incessantly discussed among themselves. Chapter 2438, The Ring. Pascal slowly climbed down the stairs in the center of the palace under the silent gaze of the fiends. His body was shrouded in black mist. The mist spiraled up and around him and gathered on his back, forming into two huge majestic wings. The fiends, who were known to be fearless, now looked worried as they witnessed Pascal's power. He walked down the stairs slowly and gracefully, shot an indifferent glance at the fiends, and ordered flatly, "Kneel before me." His short command contained absolute authority that nobody dared to defy. The fiend race was extremely arrogant. Even though Rosie had been in the Abyss Demon region for so many years, she never succeeded in making the fiends submit to her. But now, with a simple order, Pascal had made all the fiends obediently kneel before him. After the great fiends died, the others of their race scrambled for the position of the new ruler. During the relatively short period of struggle, they devoured many other beasts, which caused their bodies to grow big. Bang, 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 they all fell on their knees with a thunderous boom. Even the rebellious little fiends now lay motionless on the ground, in awe of their new master. Pascal sat down on the broad steps regally. Just then, another figure walked out from the back of the palace. It was his father, Samuel. He looked around the palace and appeared satisfied. Samuel turned back and shot a glance at his son, gesturing him to raise his right hand. Pascal wore a red ring on the middle finger of his right hand. When Samuel stared at the ring, his eyes turned wild. He couldn't help but reach out to touch the ring. But the moment he reached for the ring, his finger began melting. The sharp pain snapped him back to his senses. He had made the same mistake before as well. As a holy being, he was not allowed to master the Abyss Demon region. When he had discovered the ring from a cellar, he couldn't resist the temptation of touching the ring, and instantly his finger had started melting in the same way. Luckily, as a holy being, he could heal such small wounds very easily. He had to release Pascal from his inner world as he was left with no other choice. He had saved Pascal by putting him in his inner world when Nicholas employed the Furnace of Dark and Light, which now left him the chance to control the Abyss Demon region. It was all fate. It meant that he was destined to rule the Abyss Demon region. This thought pleased him greatly. "Bring the woman here," ordered Samuel gruffly. Pascal nodded his head stiffly. Soon the ring on his middle finger emitted a circle of bright red light. And with that the entire Abyss Demon region began to shake slightly. The fiends kneeling on the ground all looked on curiously. In the far distance, it seemed that something was rapidly approaching. There was a rumbling sound, and plumes of smoke billowed and spread into the air. Soon, a huge head appeared in front of the fiends. The head rolled all the way up to the palace, crushing some fiends en route. They were unable to move out of the way and could only watch in horror as the head rolled over them. Fortunately, their bodies were strong enough to bear the pain. The head rolled to a halt in front of Pascal. Its mouth opened and spat out a person. It was Rosie. Rosie, who was lying on the ground, appeared bedraggled and looked at Samuel sadly. The fiends were a little surprised to see Rosie in such an awful state. The fiend race was the strongest in the Abyss Demon region. This woman was the only creature that they would not dare to offend. They never thought that even she was unable to escape Samuel's clutches. Samuel hopped down the stairs and ambled towards Rosie. He was about to speak when suddenly a fluctuation of space occurred near Rosie. It was caused by Samuel's clone, who was flying in the air and trying to save Rosie. Samuel turned his head and glanced at Pascal. The latter was quick to act. He raised his hand and with a flash of light from the ring, the space channel built by the Spear of Supreme Harmony disappeared immediately. At the same time, Samuel's replica let out a howl of pain as his body contorted horribly, and the duplicate Spear of Supreme Harmony broke in half. Crack, crack, the replica kept getting twisted and soon turned into strands of faith energy, which then vanished into thin air. You are such a stubborn woman. The entire Abyss Demon region is under my control now. Even if you manage to escape from me, where will you hide? Are you expecting the black water to protect you? I hope not, sneered Samuel disdainfully. Rosie's eyelids trembled slightly. She averted her eyes and remained silent with a stubborn look on her face. Samuel caught her chin and continued, I know you can't be killed as a creature in the Forbidden Land, but I have thousands of ways of torturing you. Before he could finish, a sharp brown thorn shot out from Rosie's fingertip all of a sudden. If the thorn were to be stabbed on Samuel's head, it was lethal enough to pierce his soul to pieces. However, the thorn stopped when it was near his chin. Even though Rosie had summoned all her force of primitive fear, the thorn wouldn't budge. Samuel shook his head and smiled indulgently. He said, You are a good woman. Surrender to me. Just then, Pascal activated the ring once more. An invisible force befell Rosie's body. She knelt in front of Samuel, unable to oppose. However, her eyes flashed in defiance as she glowered at him. She looked furious, dangerous and beautiful all at once. Everything in the Abyss Demon region belongs to me. You're great, especially with your magic of cloning. If you follow me, we can conquer the entire Divine Land together. Samuel explained calmly. No way, Rosie spat angrily. She jeered, even if you really control the Abyss Demon region, it doesn't matter to me. Besides, the Divine Land is not as simple as you think. Samuel shook his head wearily and asked, You are referring to the other Shore Realm warriors, right? Rosie was astonished. How did you know about that? She asked. Samuel pointed at his head and said, All of Nicholas's memories exist here. Thanks to Nicholas's memories, he already knew about the Yellow Emperor guards and the other Shore Realm warriors outside the Divine Land. He knew everything that Nicholas knew. You think you can just swoop in and take Nicholas's position? Ha, the Yellow Emperor guards will not let you go easily, said Rosie. Zen had briefed her about the situation of the entire Divine Land, so she knew that the Yellow Emperor guards had been supporting Nicholas behind the scenes. Samuel bent down and regarded Rosie with a weird smile. He suddenly laughed maniacally for a while before saying, I didn't expect you to be so naive even after staying in the Abyss Demon region for such a long time. Chapter 2439, Replacement. Rosie stared at Samuel's face, not knowing what he meant. Just then, Pascal rose slowly and came over to stand next to Samuel. That was when Rosie began to feel the space around her turning. After a moment, she had arrived at the gate of the Abyss Demon region with Pascal and Samuel. The gate was a complete mess, and all the transmission arrays had been destroyed. The only thing that remained was the barrier set together by the many powerful clans on the floating islands. The barrier was too solid and powerful for ordinary true gods and even demi-holy beings to remove. However, Pascal raised his hand slightly, and a torrent of power surged out of thin air before it charged toward the barrier. Bang! The barrier instantly disintegrated and the gate to the Abyss Demon region was passable now. Let me show you how naive you are, Samuel said as he strode toward the gate. After a cold glance at Rosie, Pascal ordered, Follow us. Much as she was eager to leave this place, as a ferocious beast, Rosie couldn't disobey Pascal, so she merely followed him toward the gate. She was sure that the moment she stepped into the Divine Land, she would perish and then resurrect in the black waters. As she was walking to the exit, however, a black light shot out from Pascal's ring. The moment the light hit her body, it latched onto her and penetrated deep inside. When she finally set foot in the Divine Land, she realized that she was still alive. What? She asked in amazement before stretching out her hands and looking down at her body with joy. Many years ago, before the powerful clans on the floating islands had entered the Abyss Demon region and set up transmission arrays and the barrier, she had tried going back to the Divine Land. She still couldn't forget how, at that time, her body had immediately turned into ashes and disappeared. Since then, returning to the Divine Land had been like a dream for her. It had been so close and yet so far. She had never expected that now, years later, she would be able to return to the Divine Land, albeit in such a situation. Even if she had been brought here by Samuel as a hostage, she was so happy that she couldn't hide it. In a fit of joy, she spread her arms and spun around. Samuel gave her a cold look as he held out the Spear of Supreme Harmony, and an invisible spatial passageway enveloped the three of them. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. Even when the power of the Spear of Supreme Harmony had been suppressed in the Abyss Demon region, Samuel had still been able to use it to activate grand teleportation. Now, in the Divine Land, it had become even more powerful. With the Spear of Supreme Harmony, they could cross dozens of large regions every time. This way, they headed all the way north. Every time Rosie stepped out of the spatial passageway, she took a mental picture of the magnificent landscape she saw. Even the most desolate desert was a beautiful scenery in her eyes. The Abyss Demon region was a huge prison that was filled with the odor of sulfur. She had stayed there for far too long. Why north? She couldn't help asking after they had moved north several times through grand teleportation. You'll know when we get there, said Samuel indifferently. Soon, the three of them finally arrived at the northernmost region, Lofty Tree. Miles of land around the towering tree were barren because of the rolling deathly energy which surrounded it. Anything that the energy touched would be instantly annihilated. When the three of them stepped into the range of the deathly energy, a faint black circle of light appeared on their bodies. It was this circle of light that repelled the strong deathly energy and protected them. Lofty Tree. Rosie knew this place, but she didn't know why Samuel had brought her here. After walking toward the tree for a while, Samuel employed grand teleportation again and brought them to the tree trunk. Countless spiderwebs were hanging on the tree trunk, and there were 4 huge scarlet globes dangling inside them. As soon as Samuel showed up at the trunk, a majestic voice came out of nowhere. Who are you? How dare you break in? According to Nicholas's memory, 4 yellow emperor guards were confined inside the lofty tree. Some of the holy beings had already known about this for some time, but none of them had dared to come to this place. Although the 4 yellow emperor guards were sealed here, Hamish had already been released. It was by no means a wise thing to be targeted by another Shore Realm warrior. I am Samuel Hahn, Samuel replied in a calm voice. What are you doing here? One of the yellow emperor guards asked. Nicholas is dead, Samuel answered. Hamish was the one who had contacted the holy beings, but every once in a while, he would come back to report on the updates. What was more, it was the idea of the yellow emperor guards to form the alliance of the powerful clans and unite the holy beings. What? Nicholas is dead, another yellow emperor guard said coldly. How did he die? I killed him, Samuel answered calmly. How dare you? You killed our warrior and even came to provoke us. Do you really think we can do nothing to you? The faces of all the yellow emperor guards contorted in anger. So, the alliance of the rich and powerful clans failed to conquer the Abyss Demon region. Another voice was heard. This one belonged to Layden. Layden didn't care about whether Nicholas was alive or dead. All he cared about was who was in charge of the Abyss Demon region. When Rosie heard his voice, her brows shot up in shock. This was a voice that she could never forget. It wasn't a total failure. Although the alliance has been completely destroyed, I'm in charge of the Abyss Demon region now, Samuel replied. Hearing what Samuel said, the yellow emperor guards all fell silent. What are you here for? Layden asked slowly. I know everything Nicholas knew. That's how I know about your existence. Since I control the Abyss Demon region now, I want to replace him. Samuel said. At the same time, Pascal stepped forward and pointed his ring at the globes. The ring emitted an indescribable power which the yellow emperor guards were immediately attracted to. Samuel was very confident that he could get what he wanted. Although these guards had supported Nicholas, that didn't mean that they wouldn't abandon him. To them, a man like Samuel, who had control over the Abyss Demon region, would obviously be more useful than Nicholas. You are ambitious and powerful. Good. Layden's faint voice was heard again. Just then, Rosie sneered, yeah, ambitious and powerful. So what? You are doomed to fail. In another 3 to 5 years, when our 9 Li guards break into the Divine Land, you will all die. Shut up, Samuel barked. He hadn't anticipated that Rosie would speak. Pascal turned to her. His eyes twinkled, and then Rosie could not speak anymore. Layden stared at Rosie in confusion for a long time before he realized who she was. Ah, you were the little girl of the 9 Li race. To employ the blood-splitting technique to kill the whole 9 Li race, one had to use their blood. The purer the blood was, the better. That year, Layden had slaughtered the whole 9 Li race with Rosie's blood. Years had passed since then. If Rosie hadn't spoken up now, he would not have recognized her. However, she had recognized his voice as soon as she heard it. Chapter 2440, Taking Advantage of Each Other. It was very apparent that it was not an easy feat to employ and utilize the blood-splitting technique. Back then, Layden had adopted a forbidden weapon to be able to employ this grand evil magic of slaughter. While on the other hand, the use of the blood-splitting technique had caused his cultivation level to decrease considerably. And due to that, Harper and the others had taken advantage of the rare and golden opportunity to seal the Yellow Emperor guards. Samuel, who was seriously afraid of being misunderstood by Layden, kept silent for a while before he thoughtfully explained, she is just a creature from the Forbidden Land. I know it, declared Layden flatly. He radiated a neutral attitude towards him. Keenly observing Rosie, who stood next to Samuel, it was not hard for them to know what she had now become. After all, she did not have the life force of living beings, but only a manifestation of fear. But what she said is true. The other Shore Realm warriors located outside the Divine Land might be very complicated to deal with, Samuel carefully added, silently hoping that he could possibly strike a good deal. Based on his assessment, he was now clear that the Yellow Emperor guards in front of him were not powerful enough to combat against the other Shore Realm warriors outside. In Nicholas's memories, Hamish had told him that what they only needed was powerful energy, and everything would be handled by them. And this was why Nicholas had intended to control the Abyss Demon region at all costs. While they were conversing, Samuel couldn't help turning suspicious and cautious at the same time. Although he craved to replace Nicholas, he didn't trust the Yellow Emperor guards as much as Nicholas did. He even openly mentioned the other Shore Realm warriors on purpose, trying to sound them out. "Well, you don't have to worry about this. If I use the forbidden weapon, even a 5-star Yellow Emperor guard won't be a match for me. Now that the Abyss Demon region is under your control, they will be no threat at all if you choose to cooperate with me. Besides, we still have another plan," Layton revealed calmly. Samuel merely nodded in reply before he swiftly gazed around as if looking for something. Then he suddenly inquired, "Where is Master Hamish now? I should be able to help you remove the mixed element seal." "It seems that you know everything about us," countered Layton. Like Samuel, he was also exercising caution. "I told you, I have Nicholas's memories, and I know everything he knew," Samuel claimed rather proudly. "We do need your help to remove the mixed element seal, but I'm afraid not today. Hamish has something important to deal with at the moment. I think it would be best if you should go back to the floating island first so that you can take over Nicholas's heritage. Hamish will find you later if the need for your help arises," proposed Layton, reflectively. Hearing this, Samuel instinctively bowed to him and the other Yellow Emperor guards. "You're right, I'll return to the floating island first and wait for Master Hamish to come." With that, he didn't waste another second. He spun around and swiftly left with Rosie and Pascal behind him. "Layton, this guy is not a reliable man. He even dared to sound us out," blurted Xavier with much dissatisfaction as he stared at Samuel's retreating figure disdainfully. After seeing the space fluctuation dissipated right after Samuel had left, Layton fell silent for a while before he slowly explained, "Whether he's reliable or not, this man is useful for us, since he took the initiative to find us and seek our approval. Besides, the Abyss Demon region is under his control now. For us, this could be the most all-embracing help." Samuel's visit today was a mere tentative negotiation between the two parties, but it was totally inevitable that both of them would absolutely agree to cooperate with each other. Layton understood this very well. "Call Hamish over. We have to discuss something with him," ordered Layton with slight urgency. On the other side of the lofty tree, Hamish was found sitting cross-legged on a branch, with a semicircular jade pendant floating in front of him. This jade pendant was none other than the Yellow Emperor Magatama. Through it, the Yellow Emperor guards could easily communicate with each other, even at a distance. Just as Samuel had worried, Layton and the rest indeed had no confidence to fight against the other Shore Realm warriors outside the Divine Land. In recent days, Hamish had always utilized the Yellow Emperor Magatama to send messages, hoping to find any other Yellow Emperor guards. However, the Divine Land had floated in the chaos for too long, so its location was now extremely remote. The possible chances of finding the other Yellow Emperor guards were too small. But even if there was very little hope, Hamish adamantly refused to give up. He had been activating the Yellow Emperor Magatama all the time, sending some messages to the outside. At this moment, he abruptly heard Xavier summon him. He carefully put away the Yellow Emperor Magatama and immediately rushed toward the top of the lofty tree. As soon as he got there, he was taken aback by the sudden news that Nicholas was already dead. On top of that, he was even more shocked when he heard about Samuel's visit and his current control of the Abyss Demon region. How could it be him who managed to control the Forbidden Land? Hamish was bewildered and found it complicated to figure out. Now that he killed Nicholas, the other holy beings of the Union won't surely agree to follow him. In that case, right after the holy beings are reborn some days later, you should go to the floating islands to calm them down, Layton firmly ordered. For the Yellow Emperor guards, the holy beings of the Union were also part of their force. Maybe Samuel was not afraid of the holy beings, but the Yellow Emperor guards would be reluctant to see them clashing against each other. It was something they didn't want to see. "Okay, I will," Hamish solemnly replied with cupped hands. On the other side, on their way back to the floating islands, Rosie couldn't contain it any longer and spoke to Samuel in a cold voice. Do you really think they would accept you as a new Nicholas? They just want to take advantage of you. Holding the spear of supreme harmony firmly in his hand, Samuel replied calmly, everyone in this world should take advantage of each other, right? The reason why I didn't kill you or destroy your cultivation is that I still want to take advantage of your power. My ability to control the Abyss Demon region is the sole reason they want to cooperate with me. On the other hand, I want them to help me become the ruler of the divine land in Nicholas's place. With this, I take advantage of them, as well. Nonsense, Rosie countered, frowning. She instinctively believed that after the Yellow Emperor guards achieved their aim, it would be Samuel's end. She didn't say it out, anyway. Samuel softly chuckled but didn't argue any further. He then took the two of them straight to the floating island instead. At the same moment, Zen, Lorena, and the others had returned to the Dongfang clan's floating island from the Ray Tree. Since Mike had been set free, Lorena was in a rather good mood. Her heart was in bliss at the mere thought of it. She fully understood that it wouldn't be long before Mike returned with a new body. They only needed to wait patiently. At this time, it suddenly occurred to Lorena that she hadn't visited the fairy palace yet. And as a mother-in-law, she had never seen her daughters-in-law and grandson. Maybe it was because she was in a good mood after she returned to the floating island, Lorena warned Pearson, who had accompanied them all the way with such respect. She thoughtfully said, if I were you, I would have all the disciples of the clan removed from the floating island. But why? Pearson inquired curiously. Lorena followed the rest into the transmission array leading to the swirl forest. She calmly added, Samuel is still alive. If I'm not wrong, his son has controlled the Abyss Demon region. Really? But does it have anything to do with our clan? The confusion was clearly evident in Pearson's eyes as he thought to himself, as far as I know, Samuel is also a member of the Alliance. Fluctuations of space began to spread from the transmission array leading to the swirl forest, which were about to shroud them. At this time, Zen turned back and added, Samuel has another name, and that's Gregorio Yu. As soon as he finished speaking, the transmission array had been activated fully and enveloped Zen and the rest, who then completely disappeared from the spot, leaving no trace behind. Pearson was briefly stunned for a moment. As he mumbled the name to himself, he suddenly seemed to recall something, and his face darkened immediately. Inside the transmission channel, Iris still wondered what Gregorio stood for, so she gently asked Roche in a low voice. After Roche quietly explained for her, Iris's face turned ghastly pale. If what Roche said was true, she knew there was no way that her clan could be spared this time.